Chapter 958. Zhao Fu teleported to the southern continent and went to the massive rift before entering the fish-scale world. The fish-scale world was currently mobilizing a large number of soldiers, and the sounds of battle could be heard. There was an aura of war everywhere, and it seemed as if they were about to invade. Even though the southern continent was an enemy of Qin, its destruction was not necessarily a bad thing. At the very least, if they could get rid of it, the pressure on Qin would be greatly reduced. However, would the fish-scale world stop after attacking the southern continent? That was not very likely, so they would invade the entire human world. When that time came, Qin would not just be facing a continent, but an entire world, and the pressure would be even greater. Zhao Fu wanted to stop the fish-scale world's invasion, and now was the best time. After all, after the fish-scale world conquered the southern continent, it would be incredibly difficult to chase them out. Even though Qin's faction was powerful, it was not powerful enough to fight against an entire world. If they fought and the fish-scale world had the advantage of not dying, the human world would be at a great disadvantage. Because of their true bodies, players' battle intent was not as strong as before. The situation was quite difficult to resolve because Zhao Fu was not as strong as he wanted to be. It would be quite difficult for Zhao Fu to fight against an entire world by himself. So could he continue to ally with others to defend the human world? That would not do either. After all, Zhao Fu did not want to ally with those people. They had just been enemies, but if he did not ally with them, they would be too weak. He was stuck between a rock and a hard place. After thinking about it for a while, he could not think of any good ideas. Could it be that he had to ally with them for the sake of mutual benefits? Thinking about that, Zhao Fu could not help but sigh. He decided to first obtain accurate information. In the fish-scale world, Zhao Fu had used the system faction that he had nurtured from before to set up a rough intelligence network. Even though he could not obtain some secret information, it was not a problem for him to obtain some basic information. This invasion was led by many player factions, as even an idiot would understand that this was the best time to attack. There was already enmity between the two worlds, and it was impossible for them to survive. If they did not take advantage of the fact that they would not die to destroy the human world, they would definitely regret it. The fish-scale world now had 18 billion or so players, which was more than double the number of players in the past. Even though it was impossible for all of them to move out, there were at least 10 billion or so players. Even though Qin now had 8 billion or so people and 800 million soldiers, Zhao Fu could not use all of them to deal with the fish-scale people. The price was too great, and Qin still had many enemies, so he could not focus all of his forces on just one. Moreover, some fish-scale system factions would also participate, so it was impossible to estimate the exact number of battles. Thinking about it, Qin's power was quite weak in front of an entire world. However, Zhao Fu did not like allying with those people. After all, Akhenaten and some other people had participated in destroying Great Qin. So how could they ally with him? Zhao Fu simply could not repay evil with good. However, even if the fish-scale people attacked, the one who was most worried was not Zhao Fu but the entire southern continent. If it was not for the fact that they also threatened Qin, Zhao Fu could not be bothered to do anything. Zhao Fu decided to put this matter aside for now. There was no need for him to take the initiative to do anything. Perhaps after the southern continent was conquered, those people would ask him to work with them instead of him going to find them. After making this decision, Zhao Fu put this matter aside and went to the system faction that the Darkwater continent controlled. This place was developing quite well, and system factions continuously joined. Now, there were 2,800 cities, 2,400 city lords controlled by brain bugs, and 400 city lords who were not. Moreover, because they had been clearing out regions and constructing the Great Wall, they had only cleared out half of the regions, which were 300 or so regions. The population had greatly increased, and there were now 2 billion people and 300 million soldiers. With such a powerful faction, it was naturally the largest faction in the Darkwater continent. As such, it was viewed with enmity by countless player factions and some system factions. Compared to the crisis in the southern continent, Zhao Fu was more worried about the Darkwater continent situation. This was because the faction was developing too quickly, and others wanted to ally together to attack the faction that Zhao Fu had nurtured. It was not good for a faction to be too powerful. This forced Zhao Fu to change his plans and slow down his expansion, and he showed a friendly attitude. It was not that Zhao Fu was afraid of them, but that he had too many things to do. Now, this faction had 2,800 cities, and they only took up 20% of the Darkwater continent. Zhao Fu would only deal with them after he became stronger or had time. Perhaps it was because they were going to invade the human world, but they were not very focused. Seeing how friendly Zhao Fu was, they stopped their expansion and temporarily stopped attacking Zhao Fu's faction. They were quite surprised because they had just wanted to ally together to deal with Zhao Fu's faction. Before they had done anything, Zhao Fu's faction had acted in such a tactful manner. Now that they knew they had made a mistake and stopped expanding, they would not be able to attack. If they did not pose a greater threat, they would have fewer people to ally with. Whether or not they would be able to destroy Zhao Fu's faction was not certain, as everyone only cared about what was good for them. After taking care of these matters, Zhao Fu returned to Qin City. He was not in a hurry to act, and he would wait for others to beg Qin City for help. Perhaps Qin City would use some method to deal with the fish scale people by himself. He first had to discuss with his subordinates. This time, he did not receive any news from Yuxian. Ever since the last battle, Yuxian had returned to where he was to recover from his injuries, and there had been no news from him. He had not participated in this invasion either, and Zhao Fu had no idea why. Based on the constitution of a world protector's body, his injuries should have healed by now. After all, Mo Qi, who had also been injured, had long since appeared, and he had fought with Zhao Fu over the primogenitor statue. That time, Zhao Fu had activated 3 Emperor Stars, and his injuries had been even more severe. He had almost been on the verge of death, and his injuries would be very difficult to recover from. After all, he had been corroded by 3 Emperor Stars' power. It would take even longer for him to recover than before. As such, Zhao Fu was not worried at all about the Dark Demon world. Right now, he was only worried about Yuxian. If the others were easy to deal with, Yuxian would be the biggest problem. Facing the fish scale world's invasion, Qin City had to prepare for 2 things. One was to take the initiative to attack, and the other was to construct powerful defenses. Chapter 959. Of course, Zhao Fu was not the only one who had sensed the fish scale world's invasion. Others had also sensed it, and one of them was the most powerful and prestigious person in the southern continent, Akhenaten. If the fish scale world invaded now, it would undoubtedly deal a heavy blow to the human world. After all, when both sides' strength was about the same, the other side would not truly die, while the human side would definitely die. This was not a fair battle, and it was a battle that the human side would definitely lose. Moreover, now that they would truly die, most players were incredibly cowardly and did not dare to directly enter the battlefield. As such, they could not count on them to be of much use. Perhaps they had some things that could allow people to bring their bodies into the real world, but they could not bring a large number of their bodies into the real world. As such, they were even more panicked than Qin, and if they continued to fight, they would not have much of a chance of winning. Since the other side was invading, Akhenaten could not stop them by himself, so he naturally had to ally with others. Last time, when the rift had opened, all of the legatees had gathered together to discuss how to deal with the fish scale world. Everyone had contributed, and with their combined strength, they had been able to repel the fish scale world. However, this time, they did not know what the situation would be like. The relationship between the 2 sides had long since fallen apart, and there was not much to be said. Right now, the legatees were split into 3 factions. The evil side. Zhao Fu was on the righteous side. CG, Akhenaten, Oleg, Babylon, and Ramus were on the neutral side, and Tina Pendragon, Jeffrey, and Masanori Hanno were on the neutral side. All of this was because of Zhao Fu. Qin was too great of a threat, causing the relationship between the 2 sides to fall apart. Now that Akhenaten's news had spread, everyone in the world knew that the fish scale world was going to invade again. He thickened his face and sent a letter to all of the legatees, including Zhao Fu. Even though the fish-scale world had invaded the southern continent first, the fish-scale world was destroying the human world. The entire world was the fish-scale world's enemy, and the entire human world was in danger. Even if the southern continent was the first to suffer, other places would not have it easy either. Akhenaten didn't believe that they wouldn't come, because he wasn't the only one in danger. If they couldn't hold on, everyone would die together. Just a few days ago, all of the humans had transformed into their true bodies, and the situation had been quite chaotic. Now, something had happened, and everyone's expressions were quite grim. Last time, when they had defended against the invasion, hundreds of millions of people had died. Back then, they did not have to die true deaths, but this was no laughing matter. If they did not go, the world might be destroyed by the fish-scale world, and they might all die. However, if they went, they might also die. After all, this was a battle between worlds, and corpses would be strewn everywhere. The number of deaths was simply uncountable, and they might be one of them. Ordinary people felt terrified and helpless, and they could only wait and see what the higher-ups would do. Last time, it was under their leadership that they had been able to stop the fish-scale people's attack. More accurately speaking, they had defeated the fish-scale people, causing 3 billion fish-scale people to die. At the same time, the various legatees also received letters from Akhenaten. Within an exquisite, white palace, Tina Pendragon sat at her desk and looked at the contents of the letter with a serious expression. As the second person to establish a kingdom, Tina Pendragon understood how powerful a kingdom was. She was the second most powerful kingdom in the human world. A world invasion was something that no one could avoid, as it would destroy an entire world. Luckily, they had the Poison Islands and the Rift as strongholds, but once they lost their effectiveness and the southern continent was conquered, the human world would be in danger. After conquering the southern continent, the fish-scale world would be able to provide them with an endless supply of soldiers. It would be incredibly difficult to chase them out, and more importantly, they would attack other continents. Gather the army. Tina Pendragon gave the order in a pleasant voice, and the 12 armored knights around her obeyed. They walked out with austere expressions and gathered the army. Tina Pendragon definitely had to go this time, because she understood that only by allying together would they be able to resist the fish-scale people's invasion. Over at Jeffrey looked at the letter with a serious expression. The fish-scale world was serious this time, and their invasion might be many times stronger than before. If they could not defend, the human world might fall at the hands of the fish-scale people. Holy Sun, what should we do? A white-robed woman with linen hair and a pure and beautiful aura asked Jeffrey. Jeffrey nodded and said, "We definitely have to go. This is not just a matter for the southern continent, but the entire human world. No one can avoid this. And our northern continent is facing the even more terrifying demon race. Once the heavenly domain boundary disappears, we'll need reinforcements from other continents." Jeffrey also gave the order to gather the army and convince the other factions to go as well to defend against the fish-scale people's invasion. After reading the contents of the letter, Ramus from the Eastern Archipelago felt quite hesitant, but he still decided to go. He also brought some soldiers and convinced the other factions to go as well, as the fish-scale people would be under great pressure this time. It was not just the legatees from the eastern, western, and western regions who responded as well. Under the immense pressure from the fish-scale people, they could only come, or else they would be destroyed by the fish-scale people. Most people's morale was rather low. Apart from a few elite troops who still maintained fearless, resolute, and stern expressions, the rest of the people's faces were pale and dejected, expressing their fear of the impending invasion. Finally, there was the central continent. As the central continent, it was quite big and had more fate. The factions there were also more powerful, and it had given birth to monsters like Qin. Babylon, CG, Masanori Hanno, Oleg, and Zhao Fu all belonged to the central continent. Masanori Hanno was one of the legatees, but she was now one of Qin's people, so she naturally did not receive the letter. The other 3 people looked about the same when they received the letter, and they all looked towards Qin's direction. The situation in the central continent was incredibly tense, and it was not something they could call the shots. Almost all of the factions had allied together to resist Qin, and they were just barely able to resist. If they withdrew their forces and Qin attacked, the remaining people would not be able to stop Qin Zhao at all. When that time came, Qin would unify the central continent. Since Zhao Fu did not say anything, they naturally did not dare to either, as they could all be destroyed by Qin. Chapter 960. By now, Zhao Fu decided not to go to the southern continent to defend against the fish-scale people because he had a better plan. If those people could defend against the fish-scale people, it would be because of their strength, and if they could not, it would be because of their lives. As such, Zhao Fu decided not to participate in this alliance. After making this decision, Zhao Fu ordered Qin's generals to make preparations. Of course, he did not say anything to the outside world. At that moment, the various factions gathered at the southern continent. They politely and humbly greeted each other before starting to discuss this matter. However, what they did not expect was that not a single person from the Midland continent had come. This caused everyone's expressions to become quite unsightly. After all, the factions in the Midland continent were much more powerful than ordinary continents, and there were many of them. They would be of great help in defending against the fish-scale people's invasion, yet not a single person had come. How could they feel good about this? Even the most important person in this battle, Qin's legatee, had not come. For a world war like this to not have a world protector come, this was quite inexcusable. At the end of the last battle, Zhao Fu had been incredibly useful, refining a massive amount of poison and killing 3 billion or so fish-scale people. No one could replace his contributions, and he was undoubtedly the greatest contributor to the last battle. However, this time, the fish-scale people had ferociously invaded, and Great Qin's legatee, an important figure, had not come. This caused countless people's expressions to become incredibly unsightly, and their hearts sank to rock bottom. They felt that they had already lost this battle before it had even been fought. If even the most powerful person in the Midland continent did not come, how could anyone else in the Midland continent come because of the threat of Qin's legatee? Seeing that Zhao Fu was not willing to come, not only did Jeffrey, Akhenaten, and the other legatees' expressions become quite grim, but even the confident and courageous Tina Pendragon, who had established a kingdom and was the second most powerful person in the world, felt quite uneasy. This was because Qin's legatee's role on the battlefield was irreplaceable. Even if he did not do anything, just tying down the other side's world protector would be quite useful. Fighting a war was not a game, and Tina Pendragon was not an idiot. She deeply understood how important Qin's legatee was. What do we do now? Even Emperor Qin isn't coming. How are we supposed to defend against the fish-scale people's invasion? Someone cried out in panic. Yeah, how can we defend against so many fish-scale people? I don't believe we'll just die for nothing. How about we surrender and submit to the fish-scale world? Another person cried out in fear. I also feel that we won't be able to hold on. Even Prince Qin, the strongest expert in the human world, isn't here. I really don't have any confidence, someone said with a trembling voice. Hearing that Crown Prince Qin wouldn't be coming, the scene became noisy and screams of fear rang out. Although Crown Prince Qin was the most terrifying person in the human world and countless people were afraid of him, in the current situation, having him deal with the enemy undoubtedly gave them a lot of confidence. Seeing that such a thing had happened just because Crown Prince Qin wasn't coming, everyone's morale was at rock bottom. Akhenaten felt quite uncomfortable, but he understood what Zhao Fu wanted. He did not want to work together with them anymore, as they had tried to kill him many times already. It was just that they had not succeeded, and now that they had fallen out with each other, there was no longer any face to speak of. Following this, the various factions in the Midland continent sent over a letter, saying that they wanted to come and help defend against the fish-scale people's invasion. However, Crown Prince Qin was too selfish and was not willing to come, making it impossible for them to come as well. Now, they did not dare to take a step out of the Midland continent, as Qin could attack them at any moment. As such, they could only apologize. The person who sent the letter did not show it to anyone, but instead yelled it out, seeming righteous and hot-blooded. but unable to do anything. Moreover, he talked about the enmity between them, beautifying their vile actions against Zhao Fu and making Zhao Fu's cruelty and selfishness look bad. This perfectly set the tone, and people immediately started to curse. That Crown Prince Qin really doesn't know what's good for him. Can't he just let go of his personal enmity in front of a powerful enemy? Can't he just stay outside? This kind of person is disgusting. I'm going to die from anger. That Crown Prince Qin is too selfish and only thinks about himself. He doesn't care about anyone else's life or death. How could our human world have such a world protector? We're all blind. That's right. Can't that Crown Prince Qin be a bit more magnanimous? The human world is facing such a great crisis, and he only cares about himself. Not only is he not coming to help, but he's even dragging others along. This kind of person is worse than an animal. To be honest, I can't help but say this. Great Qin's legatee should give up on his personal grievances and put the human race first. He needs to live up to his identity and not be a despicable and vile person. Almost everyone stood on CG's side. CG's vicious plan had once again succeeded, which was to vilify Crown Prince Qin. In the future, the more people who did not submit to him, the more intense the resistance would be. Those who won the hearts of the people would win the world. This was to make Crown Prince Qin lose the hearts of the people. This was because no matter what they did to Qin, others would completely forget that they were doing what was right and righteous. Moreover, this was under the circumstances that they did not have to use a single soldier. Back then, Zhao Fu had been the greatest contributor to stopping the fish scale world. But what had happened in the end? He had been attacked by countless city lords, and there were even 2 world protectors who had almost killed Zhao Fu. If Zhao Fu really did not have any sense of righteousness, how could he have gone to stop the fish scale world's invasion? Back then, he had selflessly told them the information he had obtained from the Dark Demon world and fish scale world. Now, Zhao Fu was being called a selfish person. Moreover, it was clear that if they had Qin's crown prince, their battle strength would greatly increase. He would be their greatest support, and the pressure on them from stopping the fish scale world would be greatly reduced. However, by saying this, they had completely cut off the possibility of Zhao Fu coming. If they want to beg Zhao Fu, it might be possible for Zhao Fu to come back. However, if they insulted Zhao Fu like this, would he come? Chapter 9:61. All right, everyone calm down. Since the Midland Continent's people are not willing to come, our main task is to defend against the fish scale world's invasion, Akhenaten said as he looked at the scene becoming more and more rowdy. Only then did everyone calm down. Thinking about how they still had to face the fish scale world, their expressions became quite grim, and the scene once again fell silent. Only then did everyone calm down. Thinking about how they still had to face the fish scale world, their expressions became quite grim, and the scene once again fell silent. Looking at these people, Akhenaten could not help but sigh. He did not have much confidence in relying on these people to defend against the fish scale world's invasion. Over at the other legatees, they were the main force. This was especially so for Tina Pendragon, who had already established a kingdom. That was the human world's second kingdom, and it had the power of a true kingdom. It was not something that ordinary factions could resist. What should we do now? We have the massive Poison Island as our defense, which gives us a massive advantage. However, since the fish scale world dared to invade, they definitely have a plan, Akhenaten said as he looked at everyone. However, they did not have any good ideas, so they could only choose to defend in case anything unexpected happened. They did not know what the fish scale world was going to do. The people present were the elites and strategists of the 4 continents, and they started to make preparations to destroy the Poison Island and release the poison water. The Poison Island was now hundreds of regions wide, and the player factions had brought 2 billion people. The Southern Continent System faction also had 2 billion soldiers, and all of them were Stage 1 soldiers. Moreover, 20,000 or so city lords had also moved out. They had no other choice. If it wasn't for the fact that they might all die together or that they could deal with the fish scale world on their own, they would not have worked together with the players. 1 week later, under the deep blue sky, there were a few clouds, and the weather was clear and sunny. 4 billion people were stationed on the Poison Island, which was hundreds of regions wide, forming a grand defensive line. The fish scale world's various factions were also making preparations as they slowly advanced towards the Poison Island. The two armies officially clashed, and the armies gave off boundless auras as they faced off against each other, causing the surroundings to feel quite oppressive. Under the pressure of the two armies, the fish and water monsters in the surroundings had long since escaped. The two city lords stood in the sky. Because Akhenaten was the most powerful faction in the southern continent and the legatee of the most powerful dynasty, he was temporarily in charge. At that moment, Akhenaten called out as courteously as he could, "Fish scale people, our human world has no intentions of invading your fish scale world. You live in the water while we live on land. If we go underwater, we won't be able to survive. You can rest assured. You don't like living on land either. There's really no need for this war. Both sides will suffer great losses, so we can sign a peace treaty to maintain the peace between the two worlds. In fact, we can even work together at times because our common enemy should be the previous world." The fish scale world had 8 billion people, which was twice as many as the human world. Moreover, almost all of them were players, so if they died, they would not truly die. However, if the human side died, they would truly die. Akhenaten did not want to fight this battle, as it was incredibly disadvantageous and would not bring him any benefits. If there was a way to reconcile, that would be for the best. The fish scale players looked at the human world's people mockingly. Now that they had such a great advantage, regardless of whether the human side was a threat or not, destroying them would be the best thing to do, and they would not have to worry about anything in the future. Moreover, they would not truly die, so they could attack as they pleased. However, the other side could not. This was a battle that they would definitely win, so of course they had to fight. Even though they did not like living on land, conquering the human world would bring massive benefits, such as turning countless cities into fish-scale cities. With the power of two worlds, why would they be afraid of the previous world? You humans are so weak. Your Emperor Qin didn't come, so let's see how you're going to defend against us. If you submit to our fish-scale world, we can guarantee that you'll all become high-grade slaves." One of the legatees said mockingly. Akhenaten felt quite angry. He had spoken so courteously to the other side, yet they were so condescending. It seemed that this battle was unavoidable. When he thought of that, Akhenaten did not hesitate and gave the order to attack. Whoosh, 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 wooden barrels were tossed out, and they exploded as they landed in the water. Countless foul-smelling venoms spread out, dyeing the surface of the water green. This was a poison that the human world had prepared, and not only was it incredibly poisonous, but it could also seep through one's skin. This poison could also quickly spread, and if it was tossed into the fish scale players, it would be able to kill a large number of them. This was a sudden sneak attack, and it would most likely be quite effective. However, something disappointing happened. Not a single person within the green water was harmed. The fish scale players were quite startled by the human side's sudden attack, but after seeing that it was a poison attack, they could not help but loudly laugh. Last time, they had been defeated by this attack and had paid a massive price. This time, they had specially defended against this attack. Not only did they have poison prevention pearls, but they also had body protection pearls, which prevented the poison from invading their bodies. They also had detoxification pills, which they had long since consumed, which could get rid of the poison in their bodies. These 3 layers of defenses showed how much importance the fish scale people placed on this, and they definitely would not lose to poison again. That was why they did not fear the Poison Island. The fish scale people did not hesitate to give the order to attack, and the fish scale people charged towards the Poison Island. It was like a massive flood, giving off an aura that seemed to be able to destroy everything as it crashed towards the human world. Even though they had failed, the human side was not too disappointed. They had guessed that the fish scale people had come prepared, and the first attack was just a test. Even though the fish scale people had the advantage, the human side had a great advantage. First, they were fighting on land, which made the fish scale people's battle power much weaker. Moreover, the various types of soldiers were not as effective on land, such as the 3 cavalrymen. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Countless wooden barrels were once again tossed out and exploded. The fish scale people thought that it was venom, but what they saw caused their expressions to fall. The barrels were actually filled with white powder, which gave off a bone-chilling coldness as it instantly spread out. The surface of the water froze in an instant, and the people around him were frozen before they could even react. Chapter 962. The first probing attack had caused the fish scale people's side to become careless. This wave of attacks caused large chunks of ice to appear on the surface of the ocean, and the people sealed within the ice were frozen. The icy chi entered their bodies, and it was almost impossible for them to survive. This attack had cost the lives of 400 to 500 million fish scale people. The fish scale people were infuriated, and they prepared to attack the island ahead of time. A row of people walked out, holding spears made of coral. These spears were dark black, and there were blue gems embedded into the spearheads. They gave off a faint blue light and gave off a powerful water attribute energy. These people gripped their spears and vigorously threw them out. The countless spears brought with them terrifying power as they drew arcs in the air and whistled as they landed on the ice island. Bang, bang, bang. Loud explosions rang out as the spear seemed to cause great damage to the ice. When the spear landed on the ice suddenly exploded. The ice continued to crack and collapse, and large holes that were over 100 meters wide appeared. The blue gems embedded into the spears gave off an intense light, causing the ice within the hole to automatically turn into water and form pools of ice. It could be said that this was the exact opposite of how humans attacked. Humans turned water into ice, while the fish scale people turned ice into water. The blue gems embedded into the spears could turn ice into water, as water was the fish scale people's home ground. That was where they could unleash their full power. They had wanted to get closer so that they could not only turn ice into water, but they could also attack the humans and heavily injure them. It was a pity that the humans had attacked first. However, the fish scale people had been quite effective this time. They had turned more than half of the ice into water, and with another wave of attacks, they would be able to reach the bottom of the human defensive wall. In fact, they might even be able to destroy the defensive wall. The city lords of both sides started to fight in the sky, unable to interfere with the battle below. The fish scale city lords only had a bit more city lords than the humans, as only a small portion of the system faction was participating. In terms of city lords, the humans would not lose by much. Looking at the ice that had turned into water, the humans' expressions became quite grim. They understood how dangerous this attack was, so they ordered the people to reinforce the ice under the defensive wall and use restrictions to protect it. As the humans fortified their defenses, the fish scale people once again threw out spears, turning the remaining ice into water. Now, the area 5 meters away from the defensive walls was completely covered in water, and the advantage that the humans had on land was gone. The ice crystal powder had also been used up after the first wave of attacks. Otherwise, they could have used the ice crystal powder to freeze the water again. Kill! The fish scale people excitedly roared as they rushed towards the defensive walls. Their auras were incredibly majestic, and they were like a tsunami that smashed at everything. At that moment, the humans reacted and once again threw out wooden barrels, causing them to fly towards the fish scale people. The fish scale people once again thought that it was ice powder, so they raised their bows and shot arrows at the fish scale people. Puff, puff, puff. Many of the barrels that were thrown were pierced by the arrows, but it was at this moment that a large amount of black liquid flew out and splashed into the water. This black substance did not merge with the water, but floated on the surface of the water. Swish, swish, swish. Countless flaming arrows landed on the water, causing massive flames to rise hundreds of meters into the air. The searing heat waves blasted out in all directions, and many fish scale people were devoured by the flames, causing them to howl before being burned to death. The black liquid was naturally kerosene, and the massive flames formed a wall of flames, forcing the charging fish scale people to stop. This sea of flames had burned at least 300 to 400 million fish scale people to death. The fish scale people were once again infuriated, and a large number of fish scale people wearing magic robes and holding magic formations appeared. Those who wore such equipment were generally mages. These fish scale mages raised their magic staffs and chanted strange incantations, causing the magic formations to give off a brilliant blue light. The water seemed to be drawn towards them, forming a 1,000-meter-tall wave that gave off a destructive aura. Seeing this wave, the humans were greatly startled and hurriedly tried to think of a way to deal with it. Boom! However, they were not given any time. The 1,000-meter-tall wave gave off a terrifying aura as it rushed towards the defensive wall before crashing down, directly inundating the wall of fire that was hundreds of meters tall. Countless waves slammed against the defensive wall with immense force. In fact, some parts of the defensive wall had already been submerged. The defensive wall had countless restrictions on it, making it incredibly tough. However, it still violently trembled and started to crack. Some places were quite low, and the people standing on them were swept off the defensive wall by the seawater. It was impossible to tell how many people had died or been injured. However, it was incredibly difficult for the mages to create such a massive wave, and their faces were incredibly pale. Seeing this, the fish scale people once again ordered the fishman mages to cast a tsunami. Even though the fishman mages' faces were pale, they could still cast another wave. As such, they once again raised their magic staffs and chanted. Rays of blue light spread out as seawater madly gathered towards the sky. On the human side, 5 core wearing silver armor and giving off ferocious auras quickly gathered at 5 points on the defensive wall. Great core! They roared as countless traces of silver-white aura gathered at the center of the core, forming an orb of light that gave off a silver-white light. A powerful aura burst forth, and the other humans also exploded out with their cultivation power. Just as everyone exploded out with their cultivation power, it was as if it was being absorbed by a formless energy. It was the 5 orbs of light that absorbed their cultivation power, and the orbs of light that were dozens of meters wide expanded to 1,000 meters wide. Boom! The 1,000-meter-tall wave gave off destructive power as it smashed towards the defensive wall. The 5 cores simultaneously roared as the 5 massive orbs of light shot out and collided with the wave, resulting in a shocking explosion. The massive wave exploded out, causing seawater to fly everywhere before falling back down like a torrential rain. A ferocious shock wave blasted out, and both sides were thrown into chaos by the shock wave. However, the fish scale people were the first to react, and they roared as they charged over. Because the distance between the two sides had decreased, they quickly reached the defensive wall. The human side immediately panicked, and the archers drew their bows and shot arrows at the incoming fish scale people. Chi! 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 Chapter 9:63. With this fearless charge, they quickly reached the defensive walls. The fish scale archers also arrived, shooting arrows at the humans. Countless arrows whistled through the air, and casualties immediately appeared on the defensive walls. Kill! Because the fish scale people had the advantage in numbers, they roared and started to climb up the defensive walls. The humans continuously counterattacked, using all sorts of attacks against the fish scale people. The battle between the two sides was incredibly intense, and the sound of fighting continuously sounded out. The stench of blood spread out, and there were corpses everywhere. Weapons were scattered everywhere, making it seem like hell on earth. This was the cruelty of war. By now, some fish scale people had already climbed up the defensive walls and started to fight with the humans. Seeing that the fish scale people had already reached the defensive walls, the humans felt incredibly terrified. Their morale had not been very high to begin with, and now it plummeted even more. As their morale fell, their attacks also weakened. Even more fish scale people took this opportunity to climb up the defensive walls and savagely charge at the human soldiers. By now, it was clear that the humans were losing, and Akhenaten did not hesitate to give the order to retreat to the vicinity of the rift. After receiving this order, the humans naturally let out a sigh of relief and quickly retreated. They used teleportation channels that they had long since constructed to retreat to the vicinity of the rift, while the fish-scale people ferociously chased after them. Some of the humans who were fast enough naturally reached the vicinity of the rift, while those who were too slow were killed by the fish-scale people. Just like that, 600 million people died. There were players and indigenous residents, and their deaths were true deaths. The human city lords also started to retreat. Because teleportation channels could only be used by the fish-scale people, the fish-scale people could not use them. As such, they could only stop and construct a large number of teleportation channels to the vicinity of the rift. The area around the rift was where the human world and fish-scale world were connected. This could be said to be the human world's final line of defense, and there was a long defensive line. The humans once again defended here, while the fish-scale people dared to attack here. This time, the two sides did not face off against each other, and the fish-scale people ferociously rushed towards the rift. They gave off powerful auras and were unstoppable like a flood. Seeing how weak the humans were and how they were about to be defeated, the fish-scale legatees did not feel too worried, and they arrogantly laughed as they said, "You humans are all shameless wretches. I told you to hurry up and submit, and we can make you high-class slaves. Why do we have to use force to conquer you?" The big man with fangs also wildly laughed as he said to Tina Pendragon, "Beauty, hurry and submit to me. Tonight, I'll let you have a taste of a big stick. You'll fall in love with it. This is something that you humans can't do." Ha ha, yes. You humans are a lowly race, and your world isn't as big as ours, so you're destined to be conquered by us. We're your masters. One of the fish-scale elders also laughed. "True King's sword." No one replied to them, and Tina Pendragon looked at the big man with fangs in front of her. She was now truly furious. Just then, she had been hiding her power and had not used her full strength. The golden dragon seal within Tina Pendragon's body gave off a blinding golden light. Tina Pendragon raised her sword, and a golden light shot into the sky. A massive storm of sword chi spread out as Tina Pendragon slashed out with her full strength. A terrifying golden sword light slashed towards the big man with fangs. The big man with fangs had never thought that Tina Pendragon would be so powerful. By the time he reacted, it was already too late, and he was sent flying by the massive golden sword light. He crashed into the ice thousands of meters away, smashing open a large crater. His body was covered with blood, and many of his bones had been broken. His body gave off a faint blue light, which was the fish-scale world's world energy. In other words, that attack just then had been enough to kill the big man with fangs. It was only because of the world energy that the big man had been able to survive. As a legatee, this was her advantage. Seeing the power that Tina Pendragon had released after breaking through, the other legatees felt quite shocked. They understood that she was now a true king. Akhenaten did not try to hide anything and loudly laughed as he said, "Your fish-scale people asked for this, so don't blame me." This caused the fish-scale people to feel that something was off. However, seeing that their army was about to break through the human world's defenses, they did not notice anything off. At that moment, a shocking explosion sounded out. A white pillar of cold air rushed into the sky, and the cold air formed an icy mist that covered the entire sky. A bone-chilling cold air spread out, but the ice that it covered all began to crack and collapse, as if there was some kind of power that was sucking away the cold air from the ice. The fish-scale people's expressions fell, and they ordered their people to gather together and release all of their power to defend. At that moment, the pillar of icy chi spread out incredibly quickly, sweeping through everything. It was unstoppable, and it was as if the entire world was going to be frozen. This pillar of icy chi came from the island of ice. From the beginning, there had been a massive magic formation on the island of ice, and in order to use it to deal with the fish-scale people, they had made a lot of considerations. The magic formation's purpose was to instantly turn the island of ice into poisonous water and spread it throughout the fish scale world. However, they had changed the magic formation's purpose to gather countless traces of icy chi. The island of ice covered hundreds of regions, and the icy chi was incredibly terrifying. The countless fish scale people understood how terrifying the icy chi was, so they gathered together and formed a massive barrier. They had made some preparations. However, that icy chi was simply too terrifying, and as it swept past, the barrier was frozen. The fish scale people's bodies were frozen, and their lives instantly disappeared. This attack instantly killed 2 billion or so fish scale people. Of the 7 billion or so fish scale people, only 5 billion remained, while the humans still had 3 billion. The humans had only lost 600 million humans, while the fish scale people had lost 3 billion. However, the 3 billion fish scale people who died would not truly die, but the humans who died would truly die. Logically speaking, this was not worth it. Akhenaten understood this and said loudly, "We humans aren't easy to bully. This isn't our full strength, and we'll be even more powerful in the future. I think we should sit down and have a good talk. Let's focus on peace and not start a war." Talk about peace? Seeing so many fish scale people die, the legatee at the front looked at Akhenaten hatefully, but he suddenly laughed and said, "You humans have lost this time." Boom. Chapter 964. A massive crack stretched out on the horizon, following which transparent rocks giving off rainbow-colored light fell from the sky and landed in the water, creating countless splashes. A crack that was hundreds of thousands of kilometers wide appeared. This was the second crack, and the humans had never thought that the fish scale people would have such a trump card. Almost 90% of their forces were gathered here, and they did not have the strength to defend at all. Once they charged into the southern continent, the scene would be unimaginable. The humans' expressions fell as they thought of the consequences. They had fallen for a trap, and they had never thought that the fish scale people would have two teams. The first team was in charge of attracting the humans' attention, while the second team was the true killing move. Over at the horizon, a little boy with a golden dragon tail was holding a rainbow-colored shard as he happily smiled in front of a young man. "Big bro, look, I've obtained this again." That young man was Yuxian. This was something that could destroy the human world in one fell swoop. So how could he not participate? At that moment, he clearly understood the threat that the human world posed to him. Wrong. He understood the threat that Great Qin posed. If it did not get rid of Qin, the fish scale world would be destroyed at Qin's hands one day. The little boy was his little brother, and for some reason, he had obtained the ability to break through the heavenly domain boundary. Last time, he had accidentally broken through the heavenly domain boundary. This ability was naturally incredibly powerful, and according to what Zhao Fu knew, no one had been able to do such a thing yet. However, there was also a flaw, and that was that the crack was not something he could control. In other words, the little boy could break something in the heavenly domain spirit formation, but he did not know where the crack would be. However, there was a way to deal with this. If they destroyed the heavenly domain boundary in the south, there would definitely be cracks in the heavenly domain boundary. As long as they were far away from the first crack, their plan would succeed. His team had 4 billion soldiers, and 70% of them were players and 30% were indigenous residents. There were also many city lords. Looking at the crack, Yuxian waved his hand, and all the fish scale people excitedly roared. They gave off terrifying sounds as they ferociously flooded into the human world. The human world's calamity had officially begun. "Hurry and retreat. Go back to the human world and stop that group." Akhenaten yelled out in terror. If this group of fish scale people charged into the southern continent, with the current situation, the southern continent would definitely be swept through by the fish scale people. The southern continent would fall, and it would be over for them. If their home was destroyed, there was no point in staying here. However, it was not quite possible for them to retreat and stop the other team. Firstly, they were quite far away, and secondly, There were nearly 5 billion fish scale people here. How could they let the humans leave? Kill. As long as we can stall this group of humans, we will be victorious. At that time, everyone will have a share of the loot. A legatee loudly laughed as he led the way and rushed out. The other fish scale people were incredibly excited and ferociously rushed towards the human world. Facing this massive wave of fish scale people, the humans were unable to retreat in time. Waves of arrows flew into the sky and drew arcs in the air before descending like a torrential rain. The humans could only stop and defend. The fish scale people took this opportunity to attack the defensive walls and start a fight with the humans. The human side started to retreat because the other group of fish scale people had already entered the human world. This greatly reduced their morale, and their battle strength greatly decreased. Seeing the fish scale people climbing up the city walls, they felt quite afraid. It was evident how strong they were. Seeing the fish scale person jump up, a person looked terrified and nervously gripped his weapon, his body trembling. Seeing this, the fish scale person wildly laughed and ferociously attacked that person, splitting him in half in just a few strikes. Another fish scale person gave a sharp laugh and used his spear to pierce through a human's chest. Another tall fish scale person swung his axe and savagely hacked at the humans, killing them one by one. Blood sprayed everywhere, causing the fish scale people to feel even more excited. In their eyes, humans were just prey and were not worthy of being their enemies. Humans were simply too weak, not just in terms of mental strength, but also in terms of battle power. In a clash between a peaceful world and a world where the strong preyed on the weak, the fish scale people were clearly superior, while humans were lowly slaves. Facing the fish scale people's condescending mockery, a human furiously took out a large saber and hacked a fish scale person to the ground. However, a few fish scale people quickly surrounded him and dismembered the human's body in just a few strikes. Following this, the blood-red fish scale people brandished their weapons and savagely laughed as they rushed at the humans and started to kill them. On the other side, the fish scale people who had charged into the human world also started to massacre. Indeed, it was a massacre, as they did not have many soldiers left in the cities. The ordinary residents did not have much strength at all. Seeing the fish scale people arrive, they closed the city gates and vigorously defended the cities. However, facing the 4 billion fish scale soldiers, they were unable to resist at all. The fish scale people easily charged into the cities and killed any humans they saw. A fish scale person rushed in and looked at an elderly man. He wanted to run, but because of his old body, he was not very fast. After running a few steps, the fish scale person savagely laughed and swung his saber, chopping off the elderly man's legs. The elderly man fell to the ground and howled in pain. The fish scale person loudly laughed and chopped off the elderly man's head. Another fish scale person swung his hammer at a group of escaping people, smashing them with all his might. Pained cries continuously sounded out, and a man said that he wanted to surrender in fear. However, the fish scale person smashed his head into a pulp. Another fish scale person rushed into a room because he had heard the sound of a child crying. After rushing in, he saw a woman hugging a 3-year-old child who was crying in fear. Looking at the voluptuous woman, the fish scale person lewdly laughed and went up to snatch the crying child before killing him in annoyance. The woman cried as she leapt at the fish scale person, scratching at his face. However, this did not deal much damage, and the fish scale person savagely laughed as he hugged the woman and pressed her to the ground. He tore off her clothes and started to rape her. A fish scale person took a fancy to a person's golden accessory and rushed up, chopping off that person's arm. The fish scale person ignored that person's cries of pain and picked up the severed arm, took off the golden ring, and then slashed out, killing that person. Chapter 965. There was blood everywhere, as well as countless mangled corpses. There were women who had been raped and killed, and there were children lying in pools of blood. The scene was incredibly cruel and bloody, and it was as terrifying as hell on earth. Because the soldiers and city lords were not present after the fish scale people attacked, the city hall's energy barrier automatically activated, automatically protecting the city. A system main city's energy barrier could defend against the attacks of 10 or so city lords and hundreds of thousands of soldiers. However, if it was attacked by dozens of city lords or millions of soldiers, it would be quite easy to break through. Once the energy barrier was broken, the city would be conquered. On the other side of the battlefield, a human city lord was fighting with a fish-scale city lord. After a city was conquered, the city lord seal's power naturally disappeared. Without the city lord seal's power, he was killed by a fish-scale city lord in a single blow. After the city lords died, the system main city soldiers' morale plummeted, and they no longer had the will to fight. Now that their city lords were dead, their families and friends were being slaughtered. The human side's defeat was irreversible, and as the city lords died, the system main city army was heavily injured, and their strength greatly decreased. This was not only because of the city lords' deaths, but also because of the various stats that the city lords gave them. The fish-scale people seized this opportunity to attack even more ferociously. The human side was naturally even worse off, and it was almost a one-sided defeat. By now, no one had given any orders, and some people had already started a run. Once someone ran, the others would ignore them and focus on running for their lives. This caused the human army to completely collapse, and the fish-scale people continued to madly chase after the human army. On the other side, the 4 billion fish-scale people gave off a ferocious and unstoppable aura as they swept through thousands of regions in the southern continent. Everywhere they went, there was not a single person left alive, and everything of value was taken away. The things that could not be taken away were directly destroyed and burned, leaving nothing for the humans. This caused countless people to feel incredibly furious. The most tragic thing was that there were at least 1 billion residents who were madly slaughtered by the fish-scale people. With so many people dying, the skies seemed to be dyed blood red, and a sense of sorrow spread out from the southern continent. In the end, Akhenaten and the others were able to retreat, but they had suffered heavy losses. Only 2 billion people were able to retreat, and when they had retreated to the rift, they had only had 4 billion people left. That meant that another 2 billion people had died. The fish-scale people had originally had 5 billion people, but they had only lost 300 million people, and these people would not die true deaths. In actuality, if the 2 billion people who had died fought to the death, they would have been able to kill at least 1 billion fish-scale people. It was a pity that the human side's rear had been broken through, so they were destined to lose this battle. If they could not retreat and stayed here, the entire southern continent would be slaughtered. Even if they stayed here, it would be meaningless because their rear had already been breached. If they stayed here, they would be besieged and killed sooner or later. Moreover, because the fish-scale people outnumbered them and did not fear death, they had to retreat. No matter how many losses they suffered, it was better than being completely wiped out. Moreover, the fish-scale people had more people than them and were not afraid of death, so they had to retreat. No matter how many losses they suffered, it was better than being completely wiped out. Moreover, because their city lords had been destroyed, the human side's morale and strength had fallen. After hearing about this, everyone's expressions fell, and they looked quite terrified. The southern continent could not resist at all, and it was only a matter of time before it fell. By now, the entire human world was in danger, as the fish-scale people had successfully invaded. Once they conquered the southern continent, they would attack the other continents. By now, the southern continent was completely defenseless, and it was only a matter of time before it completely fell. By now, all of humanity was in danger, as the fish-scale people had already successfully invaded. After conquering the southern continent, they would attack the other continents. What should we do? Who knows what to do? Everyone in the world felt quite panicked. It was already too late to go to the southern continent, and even if they went, they would not be able to change anything. The fish-scale people had already attacked, and if they did not make any preparations, they would definitely fail. The The various factions that had gone to the southern continent to defend against the fish-scale people had already retreated to their own continents. The ones who were in the worst situation were the southern continent's people. This was their foundation, and they could only move to other continents. The two groups of fish-scale people had already met up, and there were still around 8 billion of them. Because they had already conquered the southern continent, the fish-scale people who heard about this swarmed over. The human world's southern continent was about to be conquered, and now was the time to split the spoils. Many fish-scale people who had not wanted to come before saw that there were massive benefits, and there was not much danger, so they did not hesitate to come. Even the system factions that had not wanted to participate in this had never thought that they would be able to invade the human world so easily. Now that they had come, they were quite happy. An even larger group of fish-scale people started to invade the human world. Yu Xian did not refuse these people, as it would be quite difficult for them to conquer the human world with 8 billion or so people. However, if they gathered the entire fish-scale world's power to invade the human world, it would be much easier. In just a week's time, the southern continent was practically swept through without any obstructions. Almost 90% of the region had been occupied. The southern continent's countless factions had already moved to the eastern, western, and central continents. Even the southern continent's most powerful king, Akhenaten, was no exception. After all, if he stayed, he would definitely die. Now, the number of fish-scale people gathered in the southern continent was simply incalculable. The various continents were quite welcoming of the southern continent's countless factions relocating. After all, with the threat of the fish-scale world's invasion, having more power meant more protection. If it was under normal circumstances, other factions definitely would not be welcomed. Most people in the southern continent chose to go to the eastern, western, and northern continents. The situation in the central continent was rather tense, and many people did not want to go there. Most of the factions chose the western continent because the western continent was the human world's rear. The northern continent was facing the dark demon world, the southern continent was facing the fish-scale world, and the eastern continent was facing the previous world. The western continent did not face any other world. This was undoubtedly the safest place for humans right now, so more people chose this place. Chapter 966. In actuality, there were 1,500 or 600 city lords in the Midland continent who had joined CG's alliance. CG's side naturally welcomed them, but not a single person chose to join Qin. After all, Qin's scheme had caused Qin to lose popularity. Even though Qin had a powerful advantage, they were still unwilling to come. On one hand, they hated Qin and felt disdain towards Qin's despicable faction. On the other hand, they had already offended Qin, so they did not dare to choose Qin. Some people even pushed this failure onto Qin. If Qin had helped, things would not have turned out like this, and the condemnation towards Qin became even more intense. Countless factions in the southern continent migrated, and most of them were player factions or system cities. They managed to survive, but the villages in the wilderness were not so lucky. These villages were the fish-scale world's second target. They directly rushed into those villages and took whatever they could as long as it was of some value. Those who resisted were killed, and those who did not resist were made into slaves to see if anyone would buy them. Now that the southern continent was about to be conquered by them, they did not have to rush. They slowly took everything in the southern continent, whether it was resources or people, and brought them all back to the fish-scale world. However, humans could not breathe underwater, so those who bought slaves had to buy items that could allow them to breathe underwater. The fish-scale world cities not only had water-repellent abilities, but they also had gravity, making it so that people could not swim like in other places. As such, they could only walk. If they could solve the problem of humans breathing, they would be able to survive in the fish-scale world. Breathing equipment was also quite cheap, so the fish-scale world slave market quickly became popular. A few of the largest slave markets appeared next to the rift. Humans' hands were tied up, and there was a rope around their necks. Some were locked together in wooden cages, looking like livestock. Normally, there were only young men and women, as the elderly and children did not have any value as slaves. As such, they were immediately killed. Almost all of these people did not have any clothes on them, as this allowed customers to see what was being sold. If they wanted something, they could directly pay for it, and they could do whatever they wanted with it. The people who were brought here all had empty eyes and numb expressions. They looked like walking corpses as they felt despair in their hearts. Pa pa pa. A fish scale person could not bear to see these humans walking so slowly, and he ferociously lashed out with his whip. As the whip struck their bodies, they immediately became red and swollen, and the pain caused them to feel fear, causing them to speed up. Old Luo. You've caught so many humans today. A fish scale person laughed as he looked at the fish scale people whipping the humans. The fish scale person holding the whip had a ferocious look on his face, and he laughed as he replied, "I was just lucky and found a group of refugees." Both of them were familiar with each other, so they chatted as usual. It was almost like a normal market, and what was being sold here were also goods, just humans. All of this was quite normal, and none of the fish scale people were surprised. Even 100 or so human women being raped by fish scale people did not have much of a reaction, as if this was an incredibly normal thing to do. This was the true face of the heaven-awakened world. The strong could decide everything. Normally, this was the fate of a world that was conquered by others, and Zhao Fu had long since seen this outside of the legacy land. The various continents all started to build defensive structures, as after the fish scale world devoured the southern continent, they would naturally make a move against them. It could be said that all of the humans had hurriedly gathered to hold a meeting. Now that the human world really might be destroyed, those who did not want to help were forced to join. They did not want to die, and they knew from the reports that the fate of becoming fish scale people's slaves was a fate worse than death. This time, the various factions that were plotting against Qin also arrived. Even though they did not bring many people, all of their leaders had come, such as CG, Oleg, Babylon, Lu Yi, and others. Chapter 9:67. The scene immediately fell silent, and no one said anything. Everything the elder said was the truth, and they could not refute it. The elder coldly harumphed. Also, who do you think you can blame for this situation? Do you dare to say that you didn't participate in destroying Great Qin every time? This is especially so last time. Didn't China ally with so many factions to attack Great Qin? You even invited 2 world protectors, and now one of them has brought people to invade the human world. What do you have to say now? The Chinese side's expressions became quite grim, but they could not rebut this. Even though the others were quite dissatisfied, they did not say anything. The scene fell silent, and a few people stepped out to mediate, saying, "Everyone, the most important thing right now is how to defend against the fish scale world's invasion. Even though Prince Qin did not come, we still need to face this matter." Now, almost all of the human world's top-tier factions have gathered here, so of course they are powerful. In actuality, we have the power to fight against the fish scale world, but we lack confidence. As long as we are united, I'm sure no one will be able to defeat us humans. Also, regarding Qin, if a terrifying faction like Qin can join us, we will naturally have more confidence. Qin has been hiding all sorts of methods, and there is no need to mention how powerful he is. Perhaps we can think of a way to rope him in. This is a matter that concerns all of humanity. Can Qin defend against an entire world? That is completely impossible. If we are destroyed by the fish scale world, Qin will also be destroyed. Qin's people will understand such a simple principle. Now, it was time for some people to show their attitude, such as admitting their mistakes and apologizing to him, giving Prince Qin a way out of this embarrassing situation. In that case, Prince Qin would naturally join them. After all, it was impossible for them to die together. Hearing this, most people nodded. Those words made sense. Seeing this, Tina Pendragon and Jeffrey slightly relaxed. Right now, the most important thing was to rationally discuss how to deal with the fish scale world and not fight amongst themselves and push the blame onto others. They wanted to personally go to Qin because the feeling that Zhao Fu gave them was that he was not a bad person or an unreasonable person, so they should be able to convince him to come. Thinking to there, Tina Pendragon and Jeffrey chatted for a while and prepared to leave together to meet Sheen Kingdom's legatee Sheen. At that moment, a person rushed in with a piece of paper and said loudly, "The Fish Scale World's World Protector gave us a letter saying that as long as we remain neutral and have them destroy Sheen's faction, the human factions will not be destroyed. If we ally with them to kill Sheen's legatee, the Fish Scale World will no longer invade the human world." Immediately, there were also many people who looked quite delighted and asked happily, "Will killing Great Sheen's legatee really stop them from invading the human world? What guarantee do they have?" Some people breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, "I knew it. It must be Sheen who caused trouble and caused the human world to suffer. Since it was Sheen who caused trouble, Sheen will deal with it alone." Another person said happily, "That scared me to death." So the Fish Scale World's true target was Sheen. Now, we don't have to beg him. People like him deserve to be destroyed. What's with the act? The silent scene once again became lively, but only a small portion of people were talking. Most people sank into their thoughts, because if they could borrow the Fish Scale World to destroy Sheen, that would be a good thing. However, the crux of the matter was that the Fish Scale World could not guarantee that they would not act against them. Even though they did not trust Sheen's legatee, he was still a human, while the other side was from another race. Everyone knew what the Fish Scale people had done, so they did not trust the Fish Scale World at all. As such, they were quite opposed to the Fish Scale World. Looking at the people happily chatting and thinking that the crisis had been averted, some people could not help but curse. Idiots. Right now, Sheen is the only thing the Fish Scale World fears. If he's destroyed, what will the Fish Scale World have to worry about when they destroy us in the future? However, some people were unconvinced and said that World Protector can guarantee that if there's anything that can restrict them, we could trust them. After all, neither of them are good people, so let them fight each other. That's right. Why shouldn't we trust the Fish Scale people just this once? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just that you're too narrow-minded and only care about humans. What do you mean they're not of the same race? Don't we humans kill each other all the time? When you kill people, who doesn't hold back? Anyway, I feel that the Fish Scale people can be trusted. Hearing that person say this, some people agreed, but most people could not help but sigh. It seemed that the human race really could not be saved. No matter what, I will stand on Sheen's side and the human side. I definitely won't work with the Fish Scale people. Tina Pendragon gave off a powerful aura as she spoke for the first time. Her gaze was resolute, and no one could change her mind. In actuality, Tina Pendragon had not said much because with her personality, she did not want to participate in these things. However, this time, she could not help but express her stand. As such, she did not say much and turned to leave. Hearing the human world's second-ranked king speak, many people relaxed and made their decision. However, there were still some people who clamored, "It's not that I'm saying you're stupid, but when the Fish Scale World destroys you, you deserve it. Don't blame anyone for not doing such an obvious good thing." Now, the human world was split into two groups. 30% supported allying with the Fish Scale people to destroy Sheen and protect the human world. The other 70% opposed allying with the Fish Scale people because the Fish Scale people did not even treat them as humans and only treated them as slaves. It was not that they were biased towards Sheen, but that the Fish Scale people were even more despicable than Sheen. Neither side could convince the other. The 30% of people were determined to work with the Fish Scale people, while the other 30% felt that the remaining 70% were idiots. As long as they signed a contract with the Fish Scale people, they would be able to protect the human world in some way. Moreover, even if the Fish Scale world destroyed the human world, they would still be able to help the Fish Scale people destroy Sheen. This would be a great contribution, and they would at least be able to live in the upper echelons of the Fish Scale world. The slaves would only be ordinary people. Chapter 968. Right now, the Fish Scale world's people could not truly die, and they were more powerful than humans. If this went on, the humans would most likely lose. The Fish Scale world lacked people, and if they could submit to them, they would naturally receive great benefits. Moreover, since they wanted slaves, they naturally needed people to manage them. The upper-class people were naturally the most suitable, and no matter how they thought about it, they were the best choice for the humans. The remaining 70% of people could tell what those people were trying to do, and there was no point in continuing to argue. After all, they had already submitted to the fish scale world, so there was no point in arguing with them anymore. During this meeting, everyone looked quite displeased. The problem had not been resolved at all, and it had instead become even more complicated. Everyone wanted to leave. Suddenly, another person hurriedly ran in, looking quite shocked as he cried out, "Qin took 500 million soldiers to attack the southern continent." What? Countless people were sent into an uproar. They had never thought that such a thing would happen. Not only did the fish scale world not directly attack Qin, but Qin had actually taken 500 million soldiers to attack the fish scale world. Is Qin crazy? After all, the southern continent has already been conquered by the fish scale world, and there are countless fish scale people there. Even though 500 million soldiers looks like a lot, they'll be insta-killed by the fish scale people. After hearing this, everyone felt incredibly shocked. They could not understand why Qin would do such a stupid thing. 500 million soldiers wanting to defend against an entire world? It was not just them who did not believe it. Who would believe such a thing? After all, even if Qin's entire army defended, they definitely would not be a match for the fish scale world. Now that they had taken the initiative to attack, it was simply a joke. Tina Pendragon, who had been preparing to leave, could not help but look shocked when she heard about this. What Great Qin had done was simply too shocking. Jeffrey slightly calmed down. Since Qin was willing to act, this meant that he did not intend to just stand by and watch. He was still willing to help the human world, but for 500 million people to fight against an entire world, he could not help but feel worried. Now, only a small area at the northern end of the southern continent had not been conquered, and Qin had quickly conquered that area. It was not difficult at all, as almost everyone had escaped. After hearing that Qin had taken 500 million soldiers to defend against the entire fish scale world, countless fish scale people immediately laughed. Is that legatee Qin stupid? Does he really think he's invincible? If he wants to die, don't blame him. After hearing about this, Yu Xian felt quite surprised. He had never thought that Great Qin would take the initiative to attack. However, Yu Xian could not help but become serious because with his understanding of Great Qin's legatee, he was not an idiot. After hearing about this, the fish scale people swarmed towards the northern end of the southern continent and easily surrounded Great Qin. Surprisingly, there were no surprises at all. There were at least 10 billion people surrounding Great Qin, making it so that not even a drop of water could trickle through. A group of ferocious-looking fish-scale people looked at Qin's soldiers condescendingly. One of the legatees looked at Zhao Fu and loudly mocked. "You're quite smart, legatee Qin. You took the initiative to run over and swear loyalty to your grandpa. Otherwise, what else could you have done?" Another person also wildly laughed as he said, "I heard that Qin has countless treasures and beauties. Why aren't you offering them up for us to play with? If we're happy, perhaps we'll spare your Qin. Ha ha ha." A white-haired elder coldly harumphed. "You poisoned billions of our fish-scale people back then, and now you've suffered the same fate. I won't spare Qin. This debt of blood must be paid in blood. I'll kill Qin and not leave a single one alive." Now, there were over 10 billion people gathered here, and there were even more people coming. There were already countless city lords here, and this gave them immense confidence. It was like a majestic mountain looking down on a small beast. After all, 500 million soldiers were simply too weak in front of them, and they could be easily destroyed without any chance of retaliating. Yu Xian did not reveal himself, and instead secretly observed. Qin's side was quite strange. They only had cavalrymen riding on tall black god horses. They were lined up in groups and wore black armor. They carried 3 different colored spears on their backs, and they all had resolute expressions on their faces. They gave off an austere aura, causing the air to seem to freeze. Even though they were surrounded by fish-scale people, They did not feel any fear. There were no archers or infantrymen, and the 500 million soldiers were all cavalrymen. On Qin's side, only Zhao Fu stood in the sky, wearing a black cloak. Facing the countless gazes and mocking voices, he did not show any weakness at all. He only gave a trace of a cold smile. Rumble. All of Qin's soldiers received their orders and gripped the white spears on their backs as they got on their war horses and shot out like lightning. Their footsteps were like thunder, shaking the surroundings. Seeing that Qin still dared to take the initiative to attack, the fish scale people disdainfully laughed and rushed up. However, at that moment, countless of Qin's cavalrymen vigorously threw their spears into the sky. The white spears turned into rays of white light as they shot into the sky, giving off shocking sounds. This surprised the fish scale people, and they found that the spears were not attacking them. Boom, 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 explosions sounded out as the white spears stabbed into the air and did not fall to the ground. White magic formations instantly spread out with the spears at the center. These white magic formations covered the sky, and each one was 100 meters wide. They were filled with complicated runes and gave off a faint white light, making it seem like a wondrous scene in the sky. However, the countless fish scale people did not realize that something was wrong and continued onwards. However, the people at the front suddenly yelled, "What's going on? I can't breathe anymore." The people at the front all fell to the ground, their faces turning purple as they painfully struggled on the ground and gasped for breath. They looked like fish that had run out of oxygen and desperately tried to breathe in. The countless fish scale people behind them looked incredibly shocked and stopped, not daring to take another step forward. Qin's cavalrymen once again took out white spears from their spatial rings and gave off terrifying auras as they flooded forwards. Boom, boom, boom. The spears gave off terrifying power as they shot into the sky like bolts of lightning. Following this, white magic formations suddenly appeared, covering the entire sky. Art. Chapter 969. The countless city lords naturally guessed that it was because of those magic formations, so they tried to deal with them. However, as soon as they entered, they powerlessly fell from the sky, smashing open craters. They then started to struggle on the ground like the other fish scale people. This caused the countless city lords' expressions to turn pale, and they immediately thought of ways to avoid the magic formations and use ranged attacks to destroy them. However, before they could do anything, white spears containing terrifying force shot towards them. What shocked them was that even if they destroyed the spears, the white magic formations would immediately reappear. In that moment, it was as if all the oxygen within their bodies had been sucked away, and the city lords in the sky fell like rain, struggling on the ground in pain. This scene caused all of the fish scale people to feel incredibly shocked. Even the city lords could not resist at all. Just what kind of power did that white magic formation have? What was going on? None of the fish scale people knew what was going on. Qin's cavalrymen flooded towards the fish scale people. At that moment, the countless Qin's cavalrymen no longer used their white spears. Instead, they took out the crystal spears on their backs and threw them at the countless fish scale people. This time, the targets were not the fish scale people. The crystal spears gave off sharp auras as they landed on the ground, causing blood-red magic formations to appear and a formless energy to spread out in all directions. Arg, what's going on? My body's in the true world. A terrified cry sounded out, causing countless people to feel incredibly shocked. They didn't need to truly die. That was their greatest trump card, and it allowed them to be completely fearless. However, if they were to transform into their true bodies and face true death, they definitely wouldn't be fearless. After all, there was no one who didn't fear death. However, this ability to not die had been destroyed so easily. Thinking about the people struggling on the ground, if they stayed here, they would die a true death. It was not just the countless fish scale people who were afraid. The countless fish scale city lords also looked terrified and started to run. Yu Xian, who had been hiding in the surroundings, could not help but reveal himself. He had also entered the range of the white magic formations because there was some sort of energy sucking away the oxygen within his body. Yu Xian did his best to defend, but there were too many white magic formations, and the suction force was too strong. This caused Yu Xian's expression to change. Xiao. The sound of the air being torn could be heard as a white ray of light containing terrifying power shot towards Yu Xian. Yu Xian waved his hand, and an invisible force shattered the white beam of light. The spear turned into countless motes of light and dissipated, and a white magic array appeared. A powerful suction force erupted, and Yu Xian's oxygen was sucked away. Yu Xian immediately retreated. It was not only because his oxygen had been sucked away, but also because he felt a strong sense of danger. It was Zhao Fu. Boom! A wave of demonic qi rushed into the sky, and all of the demonic qi in the heavens and earth madly gathered, forming a sun in the sky that gave off a demonic light. It gave off a boundless demonic intent, causing all creatures to feel a trace of coldness and fear. Zhao Fu directly used his full strength, and his body gave off terrifying demonic qi as he raised the sky demon sword and ferociously slashed out. A terrifying black sword light seemed to be able to tear apart the heavens as it slashed towards Yu Xian. Yu Xian's expression fell, and he did not hide his strength. He took out a golden harpoon and vigorously stabbed it toward Zhao Fu. A massive wave of power came from the harpoon, and a golden ray of light containing immense power shot out, dyeing the entire world golden. Boom! The golden ray of light and black sword light collided, resulting in a shocking explosion. Light and sword qi shot everywhere, forming a massive gale that spread out. However, the golden ray of light was still unable to defeat the black sword light and was split in two. The golden ray of light turned into motes of light and dissipated, while the black sword light sent Yu Xian flying back. Yu Xian flew back 10 or so meters and coughed up a mouthful of blood, his expression quite unsightly. After not seeing Zhao Fu for so long, he found that Zhao Fu's power was many times greater than before. How could Zhao Fu have such power? What he did not know was that when Zhao Fu was on the brink of death, the power from his 3 Emperor Stars would be even more terrifying, and he would be able to instantly kill Yu Xian. In that state, even guardian beasts would not be a match for Zhao Fu, and only if the world's consciousness personally descended would it be able to repel Zhao Fu. It could be seen just how terrifying Zhao Fu had been back then. However, this state could only last until the moment of death, and it was not something that Zhao Fu could control, but something that he had lost control of. "Big brother, are you all right?" The little boy came over. Seeing that his ferocious big brother had been injured, he ran over and asked in concern. Yu Xian inwardly sighed. He understood that with his current strength, he was not a match for Zhao Fu at all. If he stayed here, he would most likely be killed by Zhao Fu. When that time came, his little brother would definitely be killed by Zhao Fu. Clang, 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 countless chains containing terrifying power shot out from the air, and their target was not Yu Xian but the boy next to him. Zhao Fu had long since obtained information from the people he had planted in the fish scale world that this boy had the ability to break through the heaven domain boundary. As such, he could not be allowed to live, so Zhao Fu did not show any mercy and directly attacked the boy. Yu Xian felt furious and roared as he vigorously swung his harpoon, causing countless golden sword-like fish to fly out and attack the chains. Clang, clang, clang. The sounds of metal colliding could be heard as the chains madly danced in the air, and the golden swordfish flew about chaotically. Sparks flew everywhere as they blasted out in all directions, giving off shocking auras. At that moment, Yu Xian did not hesitate to pick up his little brother and turn into a ray of light as he shot over the horizon and disappeared. He was not a match for Zhao Fu, and he could not break through that strange white magic formation. Qin had come prepared, and he had been waiting for them to conquer the southern continent before destroying them. This time, Yu Xian was powerless, and he could only sullenly run. Now that the world protector had fled, how could the terrified people still dare to stay here? They all scattered in an uproar. The situation was completely different from before. Before, the fish-scale people had been ferociously looking at Great Sheen as if they wanted to devour Great Sheen. But now, there was only terror in their eyes, and they continuously retreated like a bunch of loose sand. Chapter 970. Kill. Sheen's cavalry gave off a massive aura, shaking the surrounding tens of thousands of kilometers as they ferociously chased after the fleeing fish-scale people. How could ordinary people outrun horses? What's more, most of the horses that the Sheen cavalry were riding were black god horses that had divine power. The countless fish-scale people panicked and tried to use teleportation channels to leave this terrifying place. However, at that moment, Sheen's cavalry took out the last wooden spear on their backs and threw it out. Swish, swish, swish. The sound of the air being torn could be heard as countless wooden spears flew out, instantly drawing arcs in the air. Their target was not the fish-scale people, but the ground. The wooden spears ferociously stabbed into the ground, piercing 1 meter into the ground. Isolation magic formations appeared, locking down the surrounding space, and the teleportation channels naturally could not be used. In actuality, isolation magic formations were quite easy to set up. Even without Sheen's method, as long as there were enough people, it would be enough. For example, if there were 70,000 or 80,000 people who understood magic formations, they would be able to set up an isolation magic formation in a short period of time, completely locking down an entire region. The surroundings were completely locked down, and countless teleportation magic formations were no longer usable. The fish-scale people became even more terrified. Is Sheen going to kill them all? Hurry and run. Since the teleportation magic formations could not be used, they could only use their legs to run. Only by running could they survive, or else if they stayed here, they would die for real. The countless Sheen cavalry were like tigers among a flock of sheep, chasing down and killing the terrified fish-scale people. The fish-scale people could only helplessly run in fear, and they were no longer as ferocious as before. Zhao Fu looked at the escaping Yu Xian and did not chase after him, as he felt that he would not be able to catch up. Right now, what Zhao Fu cared about the most was the current situation, and he could not allow anything unexpected to happen. As such, Zhao Fu decided to stay and control the battlefield. As the countless fish-scale people ran, many of the fish-scale people who did not know what was happening looked at the countless fish-scale people running for their lives, feeling quite confused. Logically speaking, shouldn't the fish-scale people have already destroyed Sheen's cavalry? Why were they the ones running away instead? Moreover, Sheen had only sent 500 million people, while they had countless people. It was almost impossible for them to lose. However, the reality was that the fish-scale people were running, and their faces were filled with fear and panic. Just what was going on? They hurriedly stopped one of them and asked, "Big brother, what's going on? Weren't we the fish-scale people going to destroy Sheen? Are we going to take all of their treasures and women to take revenge for Great Sheen poisoning us back then?" The fish-scale person who had been stopped said in terror, "What's there to destroy now? Sheen's sending people into their true bodies, and he's using some sort of strange method to slaughter fish-scale people. I heard that billions of people have died. They've really died." Hearing this person's words, the other fish-scale people hurrying over looked incredibly shocked. Why did so many people die? Is this true? Don't we have so many city lords and world protector inheritors? Why are they so useless? The fish-scale person said in fear, "That Sheen's imperial prince is too powerful, and we world protectors were unable to retaliate at all. Those city lords were even worse off. They didn't even have a chance to attack before dying. Sheen has sealed off this region and is trying to kill all fish-scale people. Sheen hasn't even reached here yet, so you should hurry up and run. If you stay here, you'll only die." Hearing this, the people who had hurried over thought of an incredibly bloody scene, and they felt terror in their hearts as their bodies trembled. No wonder so many people were running in terror. Now that they knew, they did not hesitate to join the fleeing group. This news quickly spread, and all of the fish-scale people were terrified. They packed up their things and quickly ran back to the fish scale world, not daring to stay in the human world for even a moment. That was simply too terrifying. After returning to the fish scale world, a piece of news that terrified all of the fish scale people spread was that billions of people had really disappeared. It was easy to imagine what had happened. There were billions of people, yet they died just like that, wiped out like ants. There wasn't even the slightest bit of commotion. It was just too shocking. Forget about seeing it with their own eyes, just hearing about so many people dying was enough to make one scared. The fish scale race only had 18 billion people, and now that so many of them had died, they felt as if they were going to be wiped out. Qin's cavalry swept through the southern continent with an unstoppable momentum, and there was no resistance at all. Because almost all of the fish scale people had retreated, there was naturally no resistance from Qin's cavalry. In the end, Qin's cavalry stopped near the rift and did not step into the fish scale world. This allowed the fish scale people, who had been in despair, to finally let out a sigh of relief. If Qin had attacked the fish scale world with such unstoppable momentum, their entire fish scale race might have been massacred by Qin. Right now, no one could stop Qin at all. Hurry, hurry, hurry. The various factions in the fish scale world gathered together in terror and urgently discussed how to deal with Qin. They definitely could not allow Qin to take a single step into the fish scale world, or else the entire fish scale world would perish. Just what was going on with that Qin? How could he control those two things? The fish scale world had successfully invaded the human world and conquered the southern continent. This was definitely a massive scheme that Qin had set up, waiting for the fish scale people to fall for it. They had been too arrogant and thought that the human world did not have the power to retaliate, which was why they had suffered such a terrifying outcome. Even though Qin had stopped at the rift, that was because Qin's cavalry could not enter the water. They were definitely preparing to invade the fish scale world. Thinking about how Qin had massacred the fish scale people in the southern continent, no one wanted this to happen in the fish scale world. However, how could they stop Qin? The various factions felt incredibly worried because they did not know what methods Qin was using, so they did not know what to do. Under the threat of Qin being wiped out, it was the first time the fish scale people had felt fear. It was the fear of the world being destroyed. Many people knelt on the ground in fear, praying that Qin would not invade the fish scale world. They prayed that things would be resolved quickly, prayed that they would survive, and prayed that such a dangerous thing would not happen again. Qin's 500 million cavalry swept through the southern continent and chased the ferocious and arrogant fish scale people back to the fish scale world. The human world's crisis has been resolved, and the human world has once again welcomed peace. Chapter 971. After hearing about this, everyone looked incredibly shocked. They had never thought that Qin would be able to fight against the entire fish scale world by himself, and he had even chased the fish scale people out of the human world. Just how had Qin done this? Following this, more detailed information arrived, causing them to feel even more shocked. Qin had completely slaughtered the fish scale people in the southern continent, slaughtering billions of fish scale people, causing the entire fish scale race to feel terrified. Qin's power was simply too terrifying, and no one felt that there was any need to do anything. If there was any danger, just Qin would be enough, and they did not have to worry at all. This was a great moment for everyone. Back then, the fish scale people had been incredibly arrogant and had said that they could easily destroy the human world. They had even called humans a lowly race and wanted to make humans slaves. Now, they knew fear. After hearing about this, some people could not help but cheer, and everyone else looked incredibly delighted. The 30% of people who had wanted to work together with the fish scale people all had stiff smiles on their faces. Thinking about it, they felt quite scared. Just then, they had foolishly wanted to destroy Qin, and thinking about how childish and laughable that had been. If they had participated back then, they would have ended up like the fish scale people, like sheep being hunted by Qin. Qin is mighty. With Qin, we humans will not have to worry about danger in the future. Qin is truly a blessing to the human race. Some people shamelessly cheered on Qin's name because they remembered what they had said before. Now, They had to take back what they had said, or else if Qin came looking for them, they would all be doomed, and the consequences would be unimaginable. Everyone understood what these people were thinking, and they felt a trace of disdain, but they did not say anything. Tina Pendragon and Jeffrey came back to their senses. They had never thought that Qin would be able to do it. Creating a legend of resisting an entire world by himself was something that was almost impossible, but Qin had done it. Thinking about how terrified they had been when the fish-scale world had invaded, they had felt incredibly panicked. However, they did not have to do anything now, and such a great danger had been easily dealt with by Qin. Tina Pendragon lightly sighed, and even with her bright and confident personality, she could not help but feel quite sad. In the human world, there is almost no one who could convince her, and Zhao Fu was the only person who she felt inferior to. Back at the southern continent, Zhao Fu stood in the sky and looked at the fish-scale people kneeling on the ground, and a smile appeared on his face. His plan had gone quite smoothly this time, and he had successfully captured 4 billion fish-scale people. They were capturing them, not killing them. After all, the white magic formation could only suck away their oxygen, making it so that they could not kill the fish-scale people. Moreover, this white magic formation could only be used on the aqua race, as it could suppress all aqua race. It was also ineffective on other races, as the white magic formation was developed based on the aqua race's body structure. Moreover, it could only be used on land, which was a big weakness. If the fish-scale people entered water, the white magic formation would lose its effect, as water countered the white magic formation. Otherwise, Zhao Fu would not have had to wait for the fish-scale people to attack. He could have directly destroyed the fish-scale world and destroyed the human world before sweeping through the other worlds. He would not have had to wait until the end to act. Back when Zhao Fu had come out from the Heaven Spirit Steel, he had decided not to participate in the defense because he had found this method. He had used his Supreme level account. Because of the weakness of the white magic formation, Zhao Fu could only wait for a suitable opportunity to act. The fish-scale people attacking the southern continent was exactly what Zhao Fu wanted to see. His goal was to deal a heavy blow to the fish-scale world and easily obtain the entire southern continent. In actuality, this white magic formation was a very outdated method of suppressing the aqua race. It had existed for a long time, and it was something that a talisman spirit world had developed to defend against the aqua race. As long as the aqua race stepped onto land, regardless of whether they had breathing equipment or not, the white magic formation would suck away oxygen. It was quite powerful, but if one could find its weakness, it would be quite easy to deal with it. Apart from jumping into the water, one could also refine a type of water oxygen pill. This kind of pill could not only provide oxygen, but it could also protect one's body and resist the suction from the white magic formation. Water oxygen pills could be found in the outside world, and they only cost a few copper coins. However, the fish-scale people did not know about this, and Zhao Fu did not know about this either. He had only obtained this information from the Heaven Spirit Steel, and it could be seen just how useful this information was. This was the reason why Zhao Fu had stopped advancing at the rift. After all, once the aqua race returned to the water, the white magic formation would lose its effect, and Qin would not be able to attack the fish-scale people. Now, it was time to deal with the 4 billion fish-scale people. These fish-scale people were all tied up with ropes and knelt on the ground in terror, their bodies trembling. There was no reason for them not to kneel, as they had all been killed. The piles of corpses by the side of the road were their corpses. Compared to humans, the fish-scale people were much more adaptable. Most of them chose to submit and humbly kneeled in front of Zhao Fu. Looking at this group of fish-scale people, Zhao Fu felt that it would be a great pity to kill them. Even though Qin had obtained the southern continent, it was essentially an empty shell. It only had a few regions, as there were not many people left. If he could take in these 4 billion fish-scale people, they would be of great help to Qin. Firstly, the fish-scale people's cultivation was not weak, and their battle intent was higher than that of ordinary players. This would greatly increase Qin's battle strength, and right now, Qin lacked people. The various ministers tried to persuade Zhao Fu to take in these fish scale people. Because there were clearly massive benefits, Zhao Fu decided to take in these fish scale people. However, Zhao Fu did not trust the fish scale people very much. Moreover, there were now 4 billion of them, which was almost half of Qin's population, so he had to be on guard against them. As such, he had to control them. At that moment, a certain item came in handy, which was the hidden evil pill that he had not used in a long time. Qin had obtained this pill a long time ago and had been greatly nurtured. Zhao Fu had used it to easily take down Orc City. Now, he could use the hidden evil pill to control them and prevent them from rebelling. That way, he would not have to worry about anything. Moreover, Zhao Fu was quite displeased with the fish scale people's actions in the southern continent. Even though Zhao Fu did not want to introduce slavery, he could use another method, which was to divide Qin's residents into different classes. The first class would be the ordinary residents of Qin, who would enjoy the basic rights that Qin had given them. The second class would be the untouchables, who were divided into different classes. Chapter 972. Just like this, the lower one's rank was the lower the treatment they would receive. If they wanted to raise their rank, they would have to work for Qin and do things that would be useful to Qin. Only then would they be able to truly become a commoner of Qin and not a peasant. None of the fish scale people objected to Zhao Fu's decision at all. Even though they would be level 2 peasants, it was better than being slaves. Thinking about the pitiful things that slaves had gone through, they felt incredibly grateful towards Zhao Fu. Out of the 4 billion fish scale people, Li Si picked out 1,500 or so top-tier beauties to become Zhao Fu's concubines and help the fish scale people's fate fuse into Qin more quickly. Zhao Fu was not very interested in fish scale women because they had fish scales on their bodies and felt quite strange to the touch. However, as long as it was beneficial to Qin, Zhao Fu did not refuse. After all, digesting 4 billion fish scale people was not an easy matter. After this, a quarter of the fish scale people had fallen here. This was no surprise to the fish scale world, and it was a heavy blow. The fish scale people's vitality was greatly damaged, and they no longer had the arrogance they had before. Now, there was the issue of city lords. Out of the 4 billion fish scale people, many of them were city lords, but some of their cities had been conquered while others had not. Many people believed that the fish scale people who had fallen to Qin had already died. Right now, the most important thing was to relocate the cities that had not been conquered. However, this was not easy, as these cities were scattered throughout the fish scale world. Moreover, the fish scale world was at its most tense, so it was impossible to sneak into the fish scale world and obtain cities. Just as Zhao Fu was thinking about what to do, a soldier came to report, "Your Majesty, the fish scale world has sent an ambassador, saying that they want to negotiate with Qin." Under the threat of Qin being wiped out, the fish scale people could not think of a way to stop Qin. As such, they could only take a step back and choose to negotiate. Right now, the most important thing was to ensure that the fish scale world was not destroyed. Everything else was secondary, as they did not want to die or become Qin slaves. More importantly, even if they lowered their heads and begged for peace, Qin might not agree. As such, they had brought 5 billion gold coins, tens of thousands of chests of treasures, and 3,500 top-tier fish scale beauties. There were even some of the top-ranked women in the fish scale world to show their sincerity and hope that Qin would not attack the fish scale world. Zhao Fu sat on a chair, while the fish scale emissary humbly knelt on the ground. He first praised Zhao Fu, saying that Zhao Fu's name was peerless and that he was a natural emperor. He then listed all sorts of gifts and asked Great Qin not to attack the fish scale world and for both sides to coexist peacefully. Zhao Fu had never thought that because of the white magic formation's flaws, Zhao Fu would not even plan to invade the fish scale world. Without the white magic formation, Qin would be completely destroyed if he entered the fish scale world. After all, Qin would not be able to compare to the fish scale people who lived in the water. Moreover, they were an entire world, while Zhao Fu was just a faction. Since they had come to him, Zhao Fu inwardly laughed. If he did not screw them over, Who would he screw over? Even though Zhao Fu was inwardly delighted, Zhao Fu still looked quite gentle as he said, "We are not a bloodthirsty and barbaric person. Since the fish scale world is willing to admit its mistakes, we will forgive you this once. We will also accept the gifts. We will also tell you a piece of good news. Your fish scale people did not die and have already submitted to Qin, becoming Qin subjects. However, they have always lived in the fish scale world and are not used to living in the human world. As such, I hope that everyone in the fish scale world will cede the Netherwater continent, which is closest to the human world, to Qin so that Qin subjects can live there. Also move their cities over. Also, now that the two worlds are at peace, you should return the humans that you captured. Only then will the two worlds be able to coexist peacefully. Of course, Qin can promise that he will not invade the fish scale world within 3 years and can sign a blood contract of the highest level as a guarantee of our friendship." Hearing that Zhao Fu would not attack the fish scale world, the fish scale ambassador was delighted. However, after hearing Zhao Fu's requests, especially for them to cede a continent, the ambassador's expression became quite unsightly. After all, the fish scale world only had 7 continents in total, and no one could decide who they belonged to. No one had unified the continents. Yet Qin wanted a continent, which meant that he wanted 1/7 of the fish scale world's territory. The ambassador felt quite troubled and tried to persuade Zhao Fu, saying, "Your Majesty Qin, ceding a continent is a bit." Before the ambassador could finish, Zhao Fu coldly harumphed and said, "There's no need to say anything else. We have already made a decision, and that is already the greatest concession we can make. Otherwise, we can only take it by force." Hearing Zhao Fu's threatening words, the fish scale people's faces became pale. They had come to beg for peace, and their goal was to prevent Qin from attacking the fish scale world so that the fish scale world would not be destroyed. After thinking about it, they decided that they could not take things too far, so they could only leave and return to the fish scale world. Naturally, they left the gifts with Qin. Zhao Fu directly put the money into the national treasury, and he gave out all sorts of treasures. As for the women, Zhao Fu gathered them together. There were the 1,500 people that Li Si had chosen and the 3,500 people that the fish scale people had given, for a total of 5,000 women. These women were all peerless beauties, and because they had been chosen from billions of people, there was no need to mention how beautiful they were. 3 of them had the most outstanding auras. One had a slim figure and a delicate face, and she gave off a valiant aura. One held Loli's face and was a young girl, and she had developed quite well in all aspects. And one had a voluptuous figure and gave off a seductive aura. These 3 were the top beauties of the fish scale world, and Zhao Fu felt quite interested as he looked at them. Facing Zhao Fu's gaze, the seductive woman gave a seductive smile and took off her clothes. The 2 other women's faces became red, and they also took off their clothes, and the other women did the same. After all, they had been sent here to serve Zhao Fu in the name of saving the fish scale world. If they could obtain Zhao Fu's favor, they would naturally be able to say a few words to Zhao Fu, and perhaps they could save the fish scale world. Chapter 973. As for whether or not he would be able to get continent, Zhao Fu did not have much confidence, so he could only wait. At the same time, he made preparations for the fish scale world to retaliate. Zhao Fu did not have much confidence in this white magic formation. The fish scale emissary returned to the fish scale world and told everyone what Zhao Fu had said. After hearing that Zhao Fu had asked for a continent, everyone felt quite angry, as no one in the fish scale world had a continent yet. However, Qin had demanded an exorbitant price, asking for a continent without doing anything. That was 1/7 of their territory, and now they had to give it to someone else. They felt incredibly furious and sullen that this person did not place them in his eyes at all. Those gifts, such as 5 billion gold coins, all sorts of treasures, and exquisite beauties, were things that they had worked hard to gather. Not only had they suffered such a great loss, but they also had to compensate them with money, treasures, and women. They felt incredibly angry. Qin's legatee accepted these gifts, but Qin's legatee was not satisfied at all. He still wanted those cities and captured humans, and he even wanted a continent. He was simply too greedy and intolerable. Prince Qin's legatee is going too far. It's one thing for us to give him so much money, treasures, and women, but he wants a continent? Why doesn't he just steal it? A fish scale person said furiously. However, someone quickly retorted, "What's more, if he wants to steal it, what can you do about it?" If it wasn't for the fact that we were afraid of him destroying the fish scale world, we wouldn't have to act so servile in front of Qin. We would have just directly attacked Qin and killed all of Qin's people. What do we do now? Are we really going to give him a continent? How can we do that? That's right. How can we give away a continent? It's not something we can decide. If we don't want to give away a continent, we'll have to think of a way to stop Qin's invasion. We can use gifts to stall for time, but Qin will still attack at any time. Does everyone want to die together? Why don't we fight with Qin and set up a lot of traps somewhere? At most, we will die together with Qin, and we won't have to suffer so much. Everyone in the hall was debating endlessly. If Zhao Fu had asked for less, they would have agreed to Zhao Fu's terms for their own safety. But now, Zhao Fu had asked for too much, causing their opinions to be divided. Some people wanted to negotiate peace, while others wanted to perish together. An elder in robes cleared his throat and coughed a few times. This elder was quite famous in the fish scale world, and hearing him cough, everyone fell silent and looked at him. The elder said, "I think we can agree to Prince Qin's request. The Netherwater continent is the closest continent to the human world, so it's naturally quite dangerous right now. People are continuously fleeing from there, and as long as we tell them that Qin will slaughter the Netherwater continent, there won't be anyone left. That way, we can give the Netherwater continent to Qin, and at the same time, it will make people feel even more enmity towards Qin so that we can counterattack in the future. Moreover, the Netherwater continent has 5,000 or so regions, and it's the smallest out of the 7 continents. In actuality, the losses won't be too great. Also, we received some useful information, which is that not all of the 4 billion or so people have died, and they have all submitted to Qin. However, do you believe that so many of us fish-scale people will completely submit to a human? That's not too likely, but we can make use of this to destroy Qin. Moreover, the Netherwater continent is being given to the fish-scale people to live in, so the ownership is still in our hands. Of course, the most important thing is time. As long as he signs a blood contract is one of the most high-level contracts in the Heaven Awakened world, and there is almost no way to break it. Moreover, the power of the contract will be passed down through the bloodline. If we agree to him, the fish-scale world will not be in any danger for 3 years, and we won't have to worry about any threats from Qin. With 3 years, do you think we can't find a way to deal with Qin? In the future, we'll make Qin pay us back 10 times over. After considering all of this, I think we can agree to his request. After all, the continent is still in our hands, and Qin is ours. Hearing the elder's words, everyone fell silent. That was all they could do. Otherwise, how could they stop Qin? They could only give up a continent, or else the entire fish-scale world would be destroyed. They did not want to be destroyed like that. In the southern continent, Zhao Fu had never thought that they would directly agree. In actuality, because of the magic formation's flaws, Qin did not dare to attack the fish-scale world at all. If they were forced into a corner and were exposed, Qin would not be able to obtain anything. As such, Zhao Fu was prepared to bargain. Zhao Fu could not help but lightly laugh after obtaining a continent like this. The benefits were simply too great and unexpected. In actuality, Zhao Fu had long since made plans. The fish-scale world had 7 continents, and Qin now occupied one. The second continent closest to it was the Darkwater continent, where Qin controlled the largest system faction, which was the faction controlled by the Brain Bug. In 3 years, this faction would most likely be able to unify the second continent. During this time, the human world would not be in danger from the fish-scale world, and Zhao Fu would use this time to unify the human world. When that time came, 2 of the fish-scale continents would belong to Qin, and the remaining 5 continents would not be able to resist Qin. That was why Zhao Fu was willing to sign the blood contract. 4 days later, it was time for the two sides to sign the blood contract, and the two sides officially met near the rift. The other side had hundreds of people, while Zhao Fu had brought 10 or so generals. Now that there was a magic formation here, the fish scale people were afraid that Zhao Fu would take this opportunity to wipe them all out, so they were on their guard. When the two sides met, the fish scale people smiled at Zhao Fu and courteously chatted with him for a bit. Zhao Fu responded with a few words before discussing the contents of the blood contract, as well as the various conditions. In the end, they came to an agreement. The people from both sides stood on one side and cut their palms. Blood flowed out of their wounds and shot into the sky, fusing together and forming an orb of blood that gave off an intense blood-red light. Blood-red words descended from the sky. These blood-red words were the contents of the contract, and after appearing, they once again fused together, turning into countless blood-red runes that shot into the bodies of the two sides, forming a contract. This time, the fish scale world had invaded the human world. In the end, they had ceded territory, paid compensation, offered beauties, and all sorts of treasures to Qin. Even though the fish scale people had felt quite humiliated, they had managed to protect the fish scale world. Because of the blood contract, the two worlds had entered a period of peace. Chapter 974. First were the two continents, the southern continent and the netherwater continent. Both of them now belonged to Qin, and no faction could do such a thing. Before, even though Qin was powerful, he did not have the power to conquer an entire continent. Obtaining 2 continents in one go was a massive harvest, and ordinary factions would not be able to do such a thing even in their dreams. Apart from the 2 continents, there were also 4 billion fish-scale people, 1 billion humans who had been captured, and 7,000 or so cities. There were 1 billion people and 7,000 or so cities here, and it was possible that this was much more than that. However, from how the fish-scale people were acting, this was already the most they could do. As such, Zhao Fu did not force them too much, as he had obtained all of this by scaring them. However, now that he had signed a blood contract, he did not have to worry about the fish-scale people's threat. Even if a few more cracks appeared in the heaven domain boundary, he would not have to worry. The southern continent now belonged to Qin, and if the fish-scale people invaded again, the main person to defend against them would be Qin. With Qin's current strength, it would be impossible to defend against an invasion, so that was why Zhao Fu had taken the initiative to sign a blood contract. As for the 5 billion people and 7,000 or so city lords, Zhao Fu did not plan to bring them back to Qin and instead put them in the 2 continents. This was because he needed factions to defend them, or else if he gathered them in the Midland continent, it would be easy for the Midland continent to fall. There were 1 billion people in the southern continent, and because it was Qin who had saved them from the fish-scale people and had experienced terrifying treatment, they were incredibly loyal to Qin. Zhao Fu placed 1 billion people, 1 billion fish-scale people, and 2,000 cities. As for the remaining people and cities, Zhao Fu placed them in the netherwater continent. The human side was Qin's territory, so it was fine for them to be a bit weaker. Even if there was any danger, Qin would be able to act in time. However, the Midland continent was much further away, so they naturally needed powerful factions to defend it. However, Zhao Fu did not trust the fish-scale people. Letting the fish-scale people back into the fish-scale world was like letting a tiger back into the mountains. Even though they were controlled by the hidden evil pill, it was still quite likely that they would betray him. Zhao Fu wanted to change their mindset and make them Qin's people instead of fish-scale people. In the future, when they fought against fish-scale people, they would side with Qin. Only then would Qin dare to use them. Zhao Fu first had them learn Chinese and Great Qin's culture, slowly assimilating them. He also forbade them from interacting with other continents. After all, they were fish-scale people, and they would not side with Great Qin if they could talk to people from other continents. As such, he had to solidify their beliefs and make it so that they had no hope of returning to fish-scale's side. Only then would they truly be loyal. Zhao Fu also gave special treatment to those who were truly loyal to Qin. That way, they would be able to set an example. It was not just human nature to seek benefits and avoid harm. It was the nature of all living creatures. There were also many other ways to do this. 3 years was not a short period of time, and it would be enough for them to truly serve Qin. When that time came, it would be easier for Qin to take down the fish scale world. After all, Qin's abilities in water were not as good as the fish scale people's. Now that the southern continent was empty, there were not many people or cities, so there was no need to clear it out. They could directly build a great wall and make this region Qin's territory. As for the Netherwater continent, almost all of the factions had retreated, but there were still some small villages, so they still needed to be cleared out. There were not many of these villages left, so it would be quite easy to clear them out. Of course, he could not hand them all over to the fish scale people. So Zhao Fu planned to have Wang Jian lead 100 million soldiers to defend that region and set up a large number of restrictions in that region. With the blood contract, the hidden evil pill, and Wang Jian there would not be much to worry about in the fish scale world. In the end, he just needed to properly develop the second continent, which was the Darkwater continent, and unify the entire continent. That would be perfect. Thinking about that, Zhao Fu gave a pleased smile. After taking care of these matters, Zhao Fu returned to Qin City. By now, many human factions had sent over congratulatory letters. Even though Qin City was not helping them, he had still dealt with the fish scale people's invasion. Zhao Fu threw all of these letters to Li Si. He was not interested in reading them, and he could guess some of their contents. They were all praises and praises. A while later, Li Si brought 20 letters over to Zhao Fu and said, "Your Majesty, these letters ask if you will return the southern continent that you have conquered to them. That was their territory in the first place, and they are willing to compensate Qin City if you can leave." Zhao Fu wondered if he had heard incorrectly. These people wanted him to return those regions to them? Were they stupid? Back when the fish scale world had invaded, they had abandoned the southern continent and moved to another continent, allowing the fish scale people to occupy it. Now, they had the nerve to say that it was their territory. Now that Qin City had taken it back, even though it was not too difficult, it was impossible for them to just hand it over. Moreover, how could Zhao Fu be interested in compensation? After all, what kind of compensation could compare to a continent? Zhao Fu coldly laughed as he said, "If they want it, they can come and take it themselves. However, whether or not we give it to them is another matter. Also, if they choose to submit, those regions will be theirs. There is nothing to discuss. Qin City only has one principle: submit or perish." Hearing this, Li Si hesitated and said, "Your Majesty, the southern continent originally had 20,000 or so cities, and they moved to other continents. If they joined a rebellion against Qin City in order to take over the southern continent, there will be a great threat to Qin City." Thinking about that, Zhao Fu felt quite startled and said, "That's quite possible. 20,000 or so cities are a great threat to Qin City, and it won't be easy to deal with them. The methods used to deal with the fish scale people won't work against them." However, they did not dare to do anything right now, because Qin had just forced the fish scale people into retreat. They were not very clear on the methods used against the fish scale people, so they were definitely afraid that Qin would use those methods against them. Although it seemed like Qin's strength had increased, the situation had not stabilized yet. He had not digested those people and cities yet, and if they attacked, it would be quite difficult for Qin City to deal with them. It seemed that only by quickly digesting those people and making Qin City more powerful would he not have to fear them invading. Chapter 975. These words immediately caused the southern continent's people to feel quite displeased. Facing Qin's condescending tone and resolute attitude, the southern continent's people really wanted to ally with China to destroy Qin. However, Qin was incredibly arrogant and had just repelled the fish scale world's invasion. He had single-handedly repelled an entire world, and he wanted that world to compensate them with money, treasures, and women. He even wanted them to cede an entire continent. They simply could not do such a thing, and they did not even dare to think about it. Now that Qin was so powerful, they were indeed quite afraid that Zhao Fu would act against them. As such, even though they were quite displeased and angry, they endured it. Everyone felt quite surprised that Qin had chosen to negotiate and did not directly charge in and destroy the fish scale world in one fell swoop. Even though the fish scale world had taken the initiative to negotiate, destroying the fish scale world would have been the best choice. Many people could not understand why Qin had done such a thing. Now that the people's safety was guaranteed, they did not think too much and only hoped that such a thing would not happen again. As Qin quickly cleared out regions, the entire human world fell into a state of peace, and everyone got along quite well. At first, many people praised Qin for chasing away the fish scale people, making it seem as if everyone was proud of Qin. However, this situation only lasted for a month. At first, the Chinese factions sent out a few groups of soldiers to try and attack Qin. Even though they were easily defeated by Qin, they found that Qin did not attack them, confirming their suspicions. That formless pressure instantly disappeared. During this month, the Chinese factions did not have an easy time, and they were constantly worried that Qin would attack them. After all, compared to the fish scale people, Qin wanted to destroy them more. The first reason was to unify the Midland continent, and the second was because of the hatred that had accumulated over the past few years. This was something that could not be reconciled, and one side would definitely be destroyed. However, after waiting for a month, they found that Qin only quickly cleared out regions and did not have any intentions of attacking them. This made them feel quite surprised, and they could not help but think about how Qin had not invaded the fish scale world. This was quite suspicious. Since Qin had such great power, why did he not destroy the fish scale people in one fell swoop? Why did he not just destroy them and unify the Midland continent? It wouldn't be a problem to use any method to unify the world. However, Great Qin had not done anything, which was quite suspicious. Before, they had not dared to do anything, but after a month, Great Qin had not done anything. As such, they could not help but test it out, and in the end, they confirmed their suspicions. Qin's methods against the fish scale people definitely would not be effective against them, greatly reducing the pressure on them. Since Qin didn't have such terrible means, they naturally didn't have to be afraid of Qin. Some things that they didn't dare to say or express also couldn't help but surface, and some people raised doubts. Why didn't Qin destroy the fish scale world? They're our enemies and killed so many of our people. Why did Qin let them off? He has to give us an explanation, or else I won't accept this. That's right, Qin. Why didn't you destroy the fish scale world? Hurry up and give us an explanation. The fish scale world killed so many of our people, and there's so much hatred between us. Not only did you not take revenge, but you even spared them and took in the fish scale people. Are you even worthy of being called a human? You're just a traitor. I also think that it's quite unreasonable. The fish scale people lost money and land, and all of that went to you, Qin. Have you thought about the people who died fighting for the human race? The money should be given to their families and friends. Qin, don't be so selfish. I also don't like taking in the fish scale people. They're our enemies, and they'll betray us sooner or later. This is especially so since they've been stained with our blood. I don't support Qin's actions at all. Some people were quite dissatisfied with how Qin had handled the fish scale people, and they felt that Qin should not have done such a thing. They all asked for an explanation from Qin, hoping that Qin would correct his actions. At the same time, some people raised different questions about Qin's righteousness in expelling the fish scale people. If Qin was so powerful, why didn't he act from the start, causing 2 billion or so people to die? Those people could be said to have died for nothing. If Qin had acted, would such a thing have happened? To think that you all said that Qin was so good, that he could shake the heavens, that he saved the world, and that he was the strongest protector of the human race. What a joke. Now that they thought about it, Qin was also an executioner of the human race. If they had acted earlier, those people would not have died, and the southern continent would not have been conquered. In fact, we can even speculate that the fish scale world said that as long as they allied together to destroy Qin, they would not destroy the human world. This shows just how much hatred they had for Qin. It was definitely because Qin had offended the fish scale people that he hid in the human world, causing the southern continent to suffer. This was Qin's scheme, and he was the mastermind behind all of this. His goal was to obtain the southern continent, but he had caused the deaths of so many people. It can be said that he has not done anything at all, and he has instead committed heinous crimes. Why can't all of the righteous people in the world ally together to punish Qin? If everyone allied together, would Qin still dare to do such a thing? Before, the various factions in the southern continent had hoped that Great Qin would leave their territory and not pursue the losses that Great Qin had caused to the southern continent, but Great Qin had to quickly return their territory. If Qin insists on doing things his own way and does not consider us, the true masters of the southern continent, and forcefully takes over our territory with such despicable methods, we will have no choice but to ally together and punish Qin. Right now, the southern continent's factions wanted to return to the southern continent because that was the place they were familiar with. It was the place where their legacies were passed down, and it was their true home. Another reason was that they were not welcomed by other places and did not like outsiders staying in their territory. They hoped that they would leave as soon as possible, or else they could only forcefully chase them away. This was completely different from before. In response to all of this, Qin did not give any reply. The various factions continued to condemn Qin, believing that Qin was a cancer in the human world. The southern continent's factions have been working together with the Chinese factions to punish Qin. On September 3rd, a clear day, the Chinese factions allied with the southern continent's factions to take back the southern continent, and Qin hurriedly moved out. Zhao Fu looked at the document in his hand with a cold gaze and threw it to the ground before walking out. Li Si respectfully followed behind Zhao Fu and asked, "Your Majesty, what should we do now?" Chapter 976. In actuality, even without this attack, after Qin finished clearing out the regions, he would definitely make a move against the Chinese factions. After all, by then, Qin's kingdom would be a level 10 Marquis kingdom, and destroying the remaining Chinese factions would be no problem at all. Now, Qin's population was 14 billion, so he had 1 billion soldiers. This meant that Qin now had 14,000 minor general seals, 1,400 advanced general seals, 140 advanced general seals, and 14 Marquis general seals. He also had 22,000 great cities and 4,521 cities. At the same time, he also had a large number of wyverns and corpse soul commanders with city lord seals. Adding all of these together, it would be quite terrifying. However, because the situation had not stabilized yet, Zhao Fu did not want to act. After clearing out all of the regions, Qin's overall strength would rise by a few levels, and it would be much easier to take down the rest of China. However, after probing, the Chinese factions understood Qin's goal. They did not want Qin to consolidate his foundation and allow Qin to continue to develop. If that happened, they would all die. Now they had to act. Otherwise, after Qin consolidated his foundation, they would not have any chance at all, and they would only be able to die. After coming to the city hall, Zhao Fu stretched out his hand and picked up the imperial ruler's seal. Because the imperial ruler's seal had always belonged to Qin, it had been acknowledged by him, and it had been continuously nourished by Qin's fate. Now, it did not resist at all and could be directly refined. Refining the clan armament would be a heavy blow to all of China, and it would be a heavy blow to their bloodline. Now that Qin had obtained a clan armament, his bloodline power would become even more powerful. Before, Zhao Fu did not want to do this because refining the clan armament would greatly affect the entire Chinese race. However, considering that Qin was also part of the Chinese race and had the clan armament, Zhao Fu had not made a decision yet. Now, Zhao Fu did not show any mercy because China needed to be reunited. Out of the countless worlds, the human race was still quite weak. Now that the fish scale people had invaded, it was possible that the dark demon people or the grassy people would invade in the future. As long as they had the strongest strength, they could be safe. Besides, Qin was originally a member of Huaxia. There There was no need to talk about annihilation. It was just a grand unification. He gathered a dozen or so generals and came to the side of the heaven and earth refining formation. He began to draw upon the chi of heaven and earth to begin the great world refining. Boom! A loud rumbling sound rang out in all directions as a 10-colored pillar of light shot into the sky. The wind and clouds split apart, and the world lost its color. Countless amounts of heaven and earth's fate seemed to be drawn by something and frantically gathered towards this place. For a time, violent winds blew, and sand and stones flew everywhere. At that moment, all of the Chinese people stopped what they were doing because a feeling of fear rose up from the bottom of their hearts. Their hairs stood on end, and they felt that a great calamity was about to befall them. What's going on? All of the Chinese people started to panic. They did not know what was going on, but some espers' faces became pale because they knew what was going on. This feeling of fear came from their bloodlines. For all of the Chinese people to feel this kind of fear, it was definitely something very important to the Chinese race. There was massive danger, and that item was undoubtedly China's clan armament. China's clan armament was in Qin's hands, and Qin was not in any danger right now. So why would the clan armament be in danger? There is only one possibility, which was that Qin wanted to do something to China's clan armament. Thinking about how Qin had taken India's clan armament for himself, countless people's expressions fell. Qin was going to betray his master and destroy his ancestors. No one had thought that Qin would do such a disgraceful thing, and they felt that he had gone mad. China's clan armament was the most important thing to the Chinese race, and yet he had dared to refine it and make it his own. This would greatly harm the Chinese race. Whether it was an individual or a country, all of China would lose a large amount of fate, and their bloodlines would be greatly damaged. This would cause the Chinese race's strength to fall by a few levels. Of course, this would not affect Qin at all, but for everyone else, it would greatly harm them. Almost all of the Chinese people were furious. After all, their most fundamental benefits have been greatly damaged, so who wouldn't be angry? The Chinese people all condemned Qin and attacked Qin's actions. They were so furious that they wanted to tear Qin to shreds, saying that Qin was selfish and that he was a disgusting faction, and that he did not deserve to be a Chinese person. Qin's actions caused everyone to explode with rage. If they could vote to destroy Qin, it would definitely be a unanimous vote. The 100 schools of thought's expressions were quite unsightly, as this would greatly affect them. However, the other party was Qin, a dynasty that was about to unify China. If they did something and Qin unified China, what would they do? They would be slaughtered, and the 100 schools of thought would be destroyed. The ones who were the most terrified were the various Chinese dynasty factions. If their clan armament was refined, their fate would greatly decrease, and their bloodline's power would also decrease. Their overall strength would be greatly weakened, and this was the time for war to erupt. We have to stop Qin at all costs. Thinking about the terrifying consequences, countless people's expressions became quite unsightly. They did not hesitate to stop Qin at all costs, as the clan armament was simply too important to China. How could they stop him? China's clan armament belonged to all of China, and it contained all of China's fate. Only all of China would be able to stop it. The various Chinese factions immediately gathered all of China's people to resist Qin and not let Qin have his way. If they did not want to live under Qin's tyranny, if they did not want to give up their wives and daughters, if they did not want China to disappear, they could only resist. Before, because of the fish scale people's invasion, countless people had been quite displeased and angry towards Qin, and Qin's condescending attitude made them feel even more furious. Back then, not many people had gotten involved. After all, even though Great Qin was in the wrong, most people's safety had been well protected, so they did not want to criticize Great Qin. However, things were different now. Great Qin was harming their interests. How could they endure this? Because of the teleportation channels, news spread incredibly quickly. Under the call of the various Chinese factions, all of the Chinese people were united and vowed to defend against Great Qin's tyrannical actions. Chapter 977. Over at Qin, the massive rainbow-colored pillar of light gave off a massive aura as it stood between the heavens and the earth. Countless traces of fate continuously gathered, forming a massive vortex that covered the entire sky. From afar, this place seemed to be covered by a layer of haze. An extremely terrifying aura spread out from the sky, and a sense of crisis that all of China felt became even more intense. It was as if someone was about to fall off a cliff, and their bodies froze in fear as their blood started to feel cold. At that moment, traces of fate rose up from the ground and quickly gathered towards Qin. The vortex in the sky became larger and larger, and it slowly descended as if it was going to fall to the ground. A powerful pressure spread out in all directions, causing the surroundings to become incredibly stifling. The air seemed to have frozen, making everyone feel quite uncomfortable. It was as if all of China was covered by a thick layer of haze, and a terrifying aura spread out in all directions. It was as if the sky was going to collapse, and the people in the surrounding continents could not help but feel shocked. Last time, when refining India's clan armament, there had not been such terrifying abnormal signs. After all, this was China's clan armament, and now that the world's fate was centered around China, it was evident just how powerful China's clan armament was. It was not something that India's clan armament could compare to. Boom! A shocking explosion sounded out as the imperial ruler's seal within the rainbow-colored pillar of light continuously trembled before exploding out with an incredibly powerful aura. This aura was filled with an ancient, heavy, and cultured aura, and it was the aura of pure China. The pillar of light gradually dissipated, and the imperial ruler's seal gave off boundless golden light in the sky. The fate in the sky and the fate on the ground turned into two streams, one flowing down from the sky and the other flowing up from the ground, and they both entered the imperial ruler's seal. The imperial ruler's seal absorbed a large amount of fate, and the surrounding fate started to liquefy before crystallizing and covering the imperial ruler's seal. It formed a crystal orb in the sky, and the orb continuously became larger. This was the most important step in refining the imperial ruler's seal, and the various factions in China started to act. Roar! Dragons' roars sounded out throughout the sky, and from the distance, one could see different colored pillars of light standing tall in the sky. There were also massive dragons in the sky, giving off heaven-shaking auras, and this scene was quite shocking. The various dynasty legatees, nation legatees, and other factions all exploded out with their legatees' fate, causing the heavens and earth to crack. They definitely could not allow Qin to refine the clan armament, or else they would all die. Under the leadership of the various forces, the common people shouted, "Qin is cruel and heartless and treats others like dogs. His crimes are monstrous. We will never submit to the tyrannical Qin." His voice was so loud that it shook the heavens and the earth, reverberating through every inch of Huaxia. Even though that was all, the imperial ruler's seal, which was at the core of the crystal ball, had been silent and motionless. However, sensing the Huaxia people's wills, it started to tremble. A golden flame burned, and 9 small golden dragons faintly appeared. Crack! A clear cracking sound rang out as a crack appeared on the crystal ball in the sky, causing Zhao Fu's expression to fall. He found that the imperial ruler's seal was resisting. Even though the imperial ruler's seal acknowledged Qin, it belonged to all of China. Zhao Fu coldly harumphed and went to the sky, and a powerful aura exploded out as a black flame appeared around his body. Zhao Fu stretched out his hand and pressed against the crystal ball, and the fate that Zhao Fu had exploded out fused into the crystal ball. The imperial ruler's seal, which had been continuously trembling, sensed Zhao Fu's fate, and it once again stopped trembling. Its resistance gradually weakened, and the cracks on the crystal ball started to heal. This caused the various factions in China to feel quite startled, and they did not hesitate to explode out with all of their fates, activating the legatee's power. Roar! Countless dragons reared their heads back and roared, giving off unyielding wills as they rushed into the sky, causing even gods and ghosts to feel fear. The Chinese residents could feel their burning bloodlines cooling down, and they also roared, refusing to submit to Qin Hao, and would rather die than submit. Traces of fate rose up from the Chinese residents' bodies and flew into the sky, fusing with the fate of the various dynasty legatees. They formed a will that reigned supreme over the heavens and earth, and it gave off a boundless aura as it flooded towards the crystal ball. Roar! Sensing this will, the imperial ruler's seal once again exploded out with a powerful aura. Boundless golden light shot out, causing cracks to appear on the crystal ball. The imperial ruler's seal had become a golden orb of light, and the 9 small golden dragons circled around it. At that moment, the heaven and earth refining formation gradually disappeared. This meant that the imperial ruler's seal had resisted Qin's heaven and earth refining, and the various factions in China had succeeded. Zhao Fu felt furious, and the Qin royal seal floated out of his body, giving off boundless black light. 9 black dragons appeared, and a boundless voice sounded out in the ears of the Qin's residents. All residents of Qin, gather Qin's fate. The Qin's residents devoutly knelt down, and traces of fate fused into the Qin royal seal. A powerful aura spread out from the Qin royal seal, and Zhao Fu once again pressed down on the crystal ball, sending this power into the imperial ruler's seal. The imperial ruler's seal's resistance once again died down, and the various factions in China once again gave their all. The various dynasty legatees disregarded all costs to gather the heaven and earth fate to resist Qin's will, and the Chinese residents all roared. The Buddhist sect, Confucian school, and Mahe school also activated their formations, gathering the heaven and earth fate to fuse with the various factions' wills, forming an even more intense will that entered the imperial ruler's seal. Boom! The imperial ruler's seal once again exploded out with an even more intense golden light, and its aura became even more intense. The 9 small golden dragons roared at Zhao Fu, forcing Zhao Fu back a step. The crystal ball was now covered with cracks, and it was on the verge of collapsing. If the crystal ball completely shattered and dissipated, then the refinement would naturally fail. At that moment, the imperial ruler's seal's resistance was simply too intense, and the 9 small golden dragons roared threateningly at Zhao Fu. After all, the imperial ruler's seal was China's clan armament, and it stood on the side of China's factions and residents, not just Qin's faction. Bang! A sound sounded out as the cracked crystal ball completely shattered, and the abnormal signs caused by the heaven and earth refining formation gradually disappeared. Chapter 978. Zhao Fu's expression was quite unsightly, and his gaze was cold as he looked at the imperial ruler's seal in front of him. It had actually chosen to stand with the Chinese factions, and he felt incredibly furious. A wave of savagery and bloodlust flowed out of his body, and he did not show any mercy. Boom! An extremely terrifying aura exploded out from Zhao Fu's body, and the Qin imperial seal continuously trembled, giving off a massive aura. A massive aura flame burst forth from Zhao Fu's body. It was 50 or so meters wide and 100 meters tall, and terrifying shock waves blasted out like wild gales. Black lightning continuously blasted out, and it looked like a natural disaster had descended. The imperial ruler's seal was also covered by the black aura flame, but it gave off an intense golden light. 9 small golden dragons surrounded the imperial ruler's seal, making it so that the black aura flame could not enter at all. Roar! 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 9 domineering dragons' roars sounded out, shaking the entire sky. The 9 black dragons around the Qin imperial seal became 1,000-meter-long dragons, and their gazes were savage as they surrounded the imperial ruler's seal. Boom! 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 3 massive stars giving off boundless auras slowly descended from the sky, shaking the entire world and causing the heavens and earth to dim. One was a blood-red star filled with blood and disaster. One was a golden star filled with the aura of an emperor, and one was a gray star filled with ghostly chi. Three massive stars gave off different lights as they appeared in the sky. Their terrifying auras swept through the world like floodwaters, causing the entire world to feel the terror that they brought, and the world fell silent. However, the changes did not stop there. Explosions shook the surroundings as powerful auras exploded out. The first was the 12 bronze men, which gave off intense green light. The second was a stone staff, which gave off destructive power. The third, nation armaments, appeared around Zhao Fu's body, causing Zhao Fu's terrifying power to reach its peak. It was as if the heavens and earth would collapse, gods and Buddhas would retreat, and all creatures would feel terror. Zhao Fu's terrifying eyes were filled with rage as he stretched out a hand and grabbed at the air. A formless energy grabbed onto the imperial ruler's seal, causing it to continuously tremble and give off a golden light as it resisted Zhao Fu, wanting to break free from Zhao Fu's grasp. "If you resist one more time, I will blast you into pieces." A cold and ruthless voice sounded out, causing the imperial ruler's seal, which had been resisting Zhao Fu, to stop struggling and express a sense of terror. The 9 golden dragons also looked at Zhao Fu in terror and retreated to the side, because they felt that Zhao Fu really was going to destroy them. Boom! The heaven and earth refining formation was once again activated, and countless traces of fate madly gathered and entered the imperial ruler's seal. The fate started to liquefy before crystallizing, and a crystal ball once again enveloped the imperial ruler's seal. Under Zhao Fu's terrifying suppression, the imperial ruler's seal did not dare to move at all, and it allowed the countless traces of fate to enter it. Strange changes once again appeared in the sky, and that terrifying feeling once again appeared. The Chinese factions and commoners had been feeling incredibly excited, but now their expressions slightly changed. However, they did not panic too much because the imperial ruler's seal was on their side. Boom! Boom! The various factions gathered their fate, and pillars of light shot into the sky as dragons giving off terrifying auras appeared, causing the clouds to swirl. "We definitely won't submit to tyrannical Qin. We definitely won't submit to tyrannical Qin. We definitely won't submit to tyrannical Qin." The countless residents unleashed their power and shouted, sending their will to resist into the imperial ruler's seal. They wanted the imperial ruler's seal to resist Qin's refinement, and it would be best if it could escape Qin's control and return to their hands. Everyone had been filled with confidence because the imperial ruler's seal was on their side. They believed that they would succeed again, but they were disappointed. The imperial ruler's seal did not respond to their resistance, and instead, it gave off a feeling of terror. What's going on? Is the imperial ruler's seal afraid of terror? This caused the Chinese people's expressions to fall, and the factions did their best to draw on the heaven and earth fate. Countless residents continued to shout, trying to get the imperial ruler's seal to resist and draw on the heaven and earth fate to stop Great Qin from refining it. CG, Lu Yi, Ji Shanming, and the others did not hide their strength, as this was a matter of life and death. Dragons' roars continuously sounded out, and all of China's aura became incredibly chaotic. It was like muddy water, and the weather continuously changed. Sometimes the sun would shine high in the sky, sometimes torrential rain would fall, and sometimes thunder would roar. Countless wild beasts were hiding in panic under this terrifying phenomenon, their hearts filled with incomparable fear. Countless people from the other continents could sense the terrifying ripples coming from China, and they felt incredibly shocked. Qin and the Chinese factions were in the final battle. The winner would be the king, and the loser would be the bandit. After this battle, China would be unified, and only the Chinese people could cause such massive ripples. This time, the Chinese factions were disappointed. No matter how they shouted and gathered heaven and earth fate to resist, the imperial ruler's seal did not seem to resist at all, and it only felt terror. Now, the imperial ruler Seal's golden light had become much dimmer, and under Zhao Fu's cold and savage gaze, it did not dare to move at all. It was afraid that Zhao Fu would turn it into dust in the next moment, and even if it resisted, it would not be able to succeed under the suppression of countless powers. As a large amount of fate gathered, a 100-meter wide crystal ball appeared in the sky, successfully entering the next step of refining and fusing into Qin's fate. Zhao Fu grabbed at the air, and countless traces of Qin's fate flowed over and fused into the crystal ball, causing the imperial ruler's seal to fearfully accept Qin's fate. Seeing this, Zhao Fu said coldly, "Today, you must become Qin's clan armament. Qin belongs to China, and you were created by Qin, so you shouldn't resist. Qin's potential is far greater than those people's." The imperial ruler's seal felt that it was powerless to resist, and it could only accept Zhao Fu's words. It gave up resisting and started to absorb Qin's fate. Immediately, the Chinese factions and commoners felt their bloodlines become cold, and their expressions became incredibly unsightly. In the end, they were unable to stop Qin from refining the imperial ruler's seal. As Qin's fate continuously flowed into it, the imperial ruler's seal started to go through changes. The other Chinese factions' auras gradually disappeared, and Qin's aura gradually covered the entire imperial ruler's seal. In the end, the imperial ruler's seal was refined by Qin. The outer layer of the crystal ball turned into dust and dissipated, revealing the imperial ruler's seal, which gave off an even more noble aura. Boundless golden light covered Qin, and anyone who belonged to Qin's subjects could feel their bloodlines heat up and become stronger. Chapter 979. Zhao Fu stretched out his hand and grabbed the imperial ruler's seal. The imperial ruler's seal was now Qin's clan armament, and its consciousness belonged to Qin. No one else in China could interfere with it, as it now only belonged to Qin and was Qin's clan armament. Now that the clan armament had been refined, it was time to launch a true attack. Zhao Fu coldly harumphed. Qin had long since sent reinforcements, and the southern continent only had 20,000 city lords. They did not have many soldiers, as most of their soldiers had died defending against the fish-scale people. As such, Zhao Fu only needed to send 20,000 more city lords and the remaining soldiers. With the two of them working together, it would be impossible to take back the southern continent with just the southern continent's forces. Now, what Zhao Fu needed to do was destroy the southern continent and the western continent, unifying China and the midland continent. Now that China's clan armament had been refined, all of the Chinese people's bloodlines had been heavily injured and were in a weakened state. Qin's main target was most likely China. His plan was to first attack the remaining regions in China before attacking the coastal countries in the south and west, finally conquering all of them. While Zhao Fu was refining the clan armament, Bai Qi and the other generals led an army of 1 billion soldiers to the boundary of the Midland Continent Central region. The soldiers wore black armor and held weapons in their hands. They stood in rows in an orderly manner, looking straight ahead. Their expressions were solemn, and their auras were majestic, shaking the heavens. Almost no one could resist such a powerful aura. Bai Qi, who was riding on a tall black god horse, stood at the front of the army. Sensing his bloodline becoming stronger, a trace of a smile appeared on his cold and handsome face as he said, "Where are the breaching camps?" 1,000 people with powerful auras walked out and lowered their heads as they cupped their hands and said in unison, "This subordinate obeys." Boom, boom, boom. Rays of light containing terrifying power shot out. These people were all city lords, and they rushed into the void zone. They stood in the air and observed the void zone before taking out rhombus-shaped crystals and throwing them out. Bang, bang, bang. Heaven-shaking booms rang out as the crystals exploded. Terrifying shock waves spread out, destroying countless trees and mountains. Rubble flew everywhere, and a cloud of dust filled the air. These crystals were the crystals of destruction that Qin had been accumulating for a long time. The 1,000 people were also array masters who were proficient in all kinds of arrays. Now, they didn't need to slowly break them one by one. They could directly destroy them by force. Regardless of whether it was the restrictions in the sky or the restrictions on the ground, no matter how strong they were all destroyed, leaving nothing behind. The restrictive power in this region disappeared, and Bai Qi waved his hand, causing the massive army to advance in an orderly fashion. Their footsteps were like thunder, and their auras were shocking. Bang, bang, bang. The people at the front continued to violently destroy the restrictions, causing loud sounds to ring out. In actuality, in addition to the destruction crystals, Qin had also prepared many methods to break the restrictions, as he had been preparing to attack the south and the west. Qin's army gave off an ocean-like aura as they continuously surged forwards and reached the defensive walls that the Chinese side had set up. Because their clan armament had just been refined, their bloodlines had been heavily injured, and their faces were incredibly pale. Their auras were incredibly weak, and facing Qin's powerful aura, their faces were filled with terror. Their legs trembled, and their hearts were filled with terror. The Chinese side continuously hurried over. After all, the commotion from breaking through the void zones was incredibly great, and it was impossible for them not to know. Even though they were continuously rushing over, many people were retreating. Because their clan armaments had been refined, they were all in a weakened state and only had 50 to 60% of their normal strength. However, they understood that even if they were at their peak, they would not be a match for Qin. This time, the Chinese side was truly doomed. It was impossible to hide such a big piece of news, and the remaining Chinese side started to panic. The situation almost went out of control, and it became incredibly chaotic. Some people rushed to stop Qin, while others hurriedly tried to escape. Kill. Qin had already started his all-out attack, and a massive army ferociously flooded forwards, seeming to be able to destroy everything. Wyverns that were hundreds of meters long gave off dragon roars as they flapped their wings and madly flew towards the defensive walls. They spat out ferocious flames and icy blasts as they mercilessly slaughtered the people on the defensive walls. Giants that were nearly 100 meters tall swung their heavy weapons and smashed them towards the people on the defensive walls. The people were unable to resist at all and were smashed into meat paste, causing blood and flesh to fly everywhere, creating a bloody scene. On the other side, countless spiders surged forwards like a flood. The tall walls didn't seem to obstruct them at all. Countless spiders climbed up the walls and started to ferociously attack people, biting them to death and devouring them. Their blade-like claws easily tore people apart. The defensive walls had almost completely fallen, and there were roughly 15,000 or so city lords hurrying over. Most of them were system city lords, but they were not very strong because they were also affected by the clan armament. However, it was not as severe as it was for players. Even though they had 15,000 or so city lords, Qin's side was not inferior to them. Seeing them arrive, city lords went up to greet them and started a ferocious battle. Bai Qi immediately ordered his army to gather their soldier auras and attack this place as quickly as possible. Roar! A massive wave of demonic qi shot into the sky as a roar sounded out. A massive demon king appeared, giving off evil demonic qi as it rushed towards the various city lords. Bang! A massive pillar of flames shot into the sky, causing the surrounding temperature to rise. A woman made of flames appeared, and she brought with her countless flames as she rushed towards the countless city lords. Boom! An incredibly cold aura spread out, causing the surrounding temperature to plummet. A woman made of icy qi appeared, bringing with her a snowstorm as she rushed towards the countless city lords. The 23 legions moved out in full force, unleashing 23 gigantic behemoths. Their astonishing auras shook the entire battlefield, causing the weather to change. These creatures were formed from millions of soldiers, and if the city lords did not ally together, they would be instantly killed. Because Qin's side did not have fewer city lords than theirs. They were unable to ally together. As such, the 20 cores started to slaughter the city lords. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.